Tonight, Donald Trump takes the stage for the first time since an attempt on his life. What message will Trump send to his party and his country? Our correspondents are inside the Republican convention on this historic night. 2 deaths now tied to a dangerous listeria outbreak from plant-based milk.
We don't know how many people don't get sick. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg.
And for decades, he starred in some of TV's most beloved sitcoms.
I am getting out of here. I don't know where I'm going.
Remembering Bob Newhart, the master of deadpan delivery.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us on a crucial night in the race for the White House. As President Joe Biden faces the biggest push yet to step aside, Donald Trump is about to take center stage as he formally accepts the Republican nomination. So that is Trump arriving just a short while ago for the final night of his party's convention. He is set to speak just over an hour from now in what will be his first speech since that assassination attempt, with so many watching to see what tone he strikes and whether he calls for unity. Katie Simpson starts our coverage tonight from Milwaukee. So, Katie, can you take us through your sense of what we're expecting from Trump?
This is all about what Donald Trump is going to say and how he's going to say it, Adrienne. And really, we've asked that question so many times in the past, but this moment, it is different. This is the first time he is speaking since that attempted assassination. And will he emerge as some sort of changed man, as he says, as his family says? Will we see a softer, kinder, gentler version of Donald Trump? Or is it going to be more like the Donald Trump that the world is already so familiar with? Angry, divisive, airing his personal grievances, and spreading misinformation about certain key topics. That is what people are going to be watching for. There's heightened interest because, of course, this is the first time he is expected to share his own story about what happened on that stage in Pennsylvania. We also know Donald Trump is going to plan to outline his vision for America, the changes he wants to see take place in America to make it great again, as is his slogan. But the question is, will he tread into some of that more controversial territory? Is he going to talk about some of his plans to change the way the U.S. government functions, plans to get rid of civil servants, replace them with Trump loyalists, to possibly remove some of the checks and balances and power? That's what the Democrats are arguing. That's why they say the stakes of this election are so high. Is he going to lean into some of those grievances, as we've seen in the past? Some of the speakers earlier tonight did that for him. His lawyer, Alina Habba, criticized the criminal charges against him, calling it the weaponization of the justice system. There is no evidence to show that the justice system has been targeting Donald Trump simply because he's running for re-election. So those are the kinds of things to be watching for tonight. Also, no matter what, even if the events of Saturday did not take place, this was going to be a huge moment in the political calendar. Never before has a convicted felon run for re-election or run for election in the United States. Donald Trump attempted to steal the election, remain in power, and so after the 2020 election. So these are all things the United States has never seen before. But after what happened on Saturday, the stakes are even higher.
So, Katie, you had a chance to speak with some of the people who are attending the convention. You have for a while. What did they tell you?
They absolutely love him. This is the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, and it is in control of the political machine here. I have not heard a single negative word of all the people I spoke to this week, and they are open to hearing a kinder, softer, gentler version of Trump.
I've never seen so much unity in the Republican Party before. The tone has completely changed.
The vibe is fantastic. They keep saying once you've taken a bullet, you change. And everybody is so impressed with Trump getting right back up. Didn't miss a beat.
I trust in everything Donald Trump represents 100%. And I think he's going to bring out, more of the real side of him.
That's the sense inside the arena. The question is whether what Trump says tonight can change hearts and minds outside of this bubble. Opinions about Donald Trump are pretty baked in, and so changing those minds, well, tonight's going to be a huge stage if he's going to try and do that.
All right, Katie Simpson live in Milwaukee. Thanks, Katie. And speaking of live, this is a scene right now inside the Republican National Convention. It's the fourth and final night of the event. UFC President Dana White is set to speak. Kid Rock will perform before Trump takes the stage next hour. We will bring that to you live. So next, let's bring in Paul Hunter. Paul, what is Trump hoping to achieve with that speech tonight?
Well, let me begin by referencing everybody in this arena, Adrienne. Everybody in this arena will be voting for Donald Trump in November. So in a sense, he's not speaking to anybody who will be cheering him on here tonight. As Katie was saying, Donald Trump is speaking to the rest of America, the many tens of millions who will be tuning into this event tonight, probably more than the number that would have tuned in were it not for what happened in Pennsylvania. This is his first big chance to speak to the country since then, and about that, and about his vision for America. Specifically, he's trying to reach people in those so-called battleground states, the swing states. And with what's going on with Democrats lately, they're already saying that some of them are leaning Trump. The Arizonas, the Nevadas, the Georgias. So you narrow that audience down even more to the swing states up this way, Wisconsin, where we are, Michigan, Pennsylvania. That's who he's aiming his words at tonight, to try to win that sliver of votes that still could come his way. The question is, what will he say to them? The advice he's almost certainly been given, don't be extreme. Can he achieve that? We ran into Florida Senator Marco Rubio outside the arena this afternoon to talk about some of this. Here's what he had to say.
Americans tonight are going to see a man, at the end of the day, what I've always seen, and I hope that it's come across throughout this campaign. Look, what Donald Trump stands for is, they call it extreme. There's nothing dangerous or extreme about it. It's common sense. I mean, what Americans want is, they want a good job. They want things to cost less. They want to feel safe. They're not anti-immigrant. They just think if someone's going to come into America, they should do so legally. That requires us to have a secure border and enforce our immigration laws. They want America to be respected in the world.
Make it policy against policy, make it common sense stuff, jobs, prices, the border, the kind of things we've heard from Trump before, but keep it at that. Keep it not extreme, if I can put it that way, Adrienne, is the message.
Yeah, you certainly get the feeling of that consistency within the people at the convention, but again, the tone that Trump strikes is up to him. And what are you hearing about that?
That nobody knows until he walks out on stage. Certainly he has appeared to be a different person in the little snippets of time we've seen him here. Marco Rubio was also saying to me, they're like, look, if you want to talk about tone, Democrats have to bring their tone down as well. And that Donald Trump has a right to take on, and he must take on Joe Biden. He's got the right to say Joe Biden's policies and his ideas are terrible. That's politics. He's got to win the election. But the advice, again, keep the tone down to win over those handful, figuratively, of undecided voters that are still out there.
All right, so interesting. Paul Hunter live in Milwaukee. So at this point, Donald Trump is about an hour from making his way to the stage. We'll have his speech live for you as soon as it begins, but we want and need to turn to his opponent, who is facing growing pressure to step aside. In a stark contrast to the Republican show of solidarity, Democrats appear divided over their leader, with reports now that Barack Obama is among those advising Joe Biden to bow out. And as Sasha Petrusik explains, Biden seems powerless to stop it.
The first woman vice president.
With Joe Biden down with COVID,
Kamala Harris.
It was up to Vice President Kamala Harris to carry the Democratic campaign for the White House.
You cannot claim you stand for unity if you are pushing an agenda that deprives whole groups of Americans of basic freedoms, opportunity, and dignity.
Going after Republicans with a vigor Some say President Joe Biden is missing.
But I think that's where you see someone like Vice President Harris really taking it to Donald Trump.
The timing of Biden's COVID isolation couldn't be worse for Democrats as questions mount about whether the 81-year-old should step aside.
The millionaires pay 1%.
Beginning after a weak debate performance, snowballing as big donors and members of Congress went public.
Again, it's his decision because he has the delegates and the pledged delegates, but frankly, I think there's real concern.
But it's the reports now of growing private concerns deepening Biden's crisis. Of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and now former President Barack Obama, all reportedly warning Biden he's likely to lose and bring his party down with him.
Today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
At their convention, seen by jubilant Republicans as weakness.
They know they're fixing to get their teeth kicked in.
Experts say public polls have not reflected a disastrous drop-off in support.
And so I do believe that the race hasn't changed as much as perhaps we would want to think it has.
And publicly, at least, aides say Biden remains steadfast. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
Here at home, wildfire evacuation order is expanding in BC's southern interior tonight after two smaller fires merged into one large blaze.
I'm about 200-300 meters away and I already feel the heat.
The spot is near Spence's Bridge, which is west of Kamloops. This witness aptly describing the scene as Armageddon. 85 properties are being told to leave right now, as well as several First Nations. Currently, more than 230 fires are burning across the province. Officials warn the next 3 days will be very challenging. Well, that major listeria outbreak is being blamed for at least 2 deaths in Ontario following a Canada-wide recall of some plant-based beverages. Megan Fitzpatrick now with the new warnings and why food-based infections are so dangerous.
The shelves sit empty as the scope of a listeria outbreak becomes clearer.
We want to be sure that everything was swiftly removed so people can rely on the product that we have on our shelves.
This after a nationwide recall of Silk and Great Value almond, oat, and coconut beverages suspected of containing the bacteria. Now, the Public Health Agency of Canada is reporting 2 deaths linked to the outbreak. There are 12 confirmed cases of listeriosis, 10 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, 1 in Nova Scotia. But the concern is cases could soon rise.
It can be quite some time between eating or drinking the contaminated material and actually getting sick.
Some people get mild symptoms of fever, nausea, and vomiting and may never know they were infected.
There are ways to treat it, but the problem is, of course, that oftentimes you don't suspect it until it's further advanced.
Listeriosis can be fatal, and people who are pregnant or elderly are at greater risk of severe illness. The company that makes the recalled products says it's working with authorities to investigate the cause of contamination. Danone Canada calls news of the deaths devastating and said their sincere sympathies go out to the families and loved ones during this difficult time.
This is a pretty major outbreak, and I think a lot of people are surprised that it's coming from what people would consider sort of a health type of food.
In 2008, 22 people died from a listeria outbreak linked to contaminated meat made by Maple Leaf Foods. That outbreak prompted some changes to food safety, but experts say more progress is needed.
Can we get better point of production testing so that these things don't happen?
As investigators search for the cause of this outbreak, the advice is do not consume any of the recalled products and throw them out immediately or return them to the store. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
Labour Minister and Newfoundland and Labrador MP Seamus O'Regan is resigning from cabinet, citing family reasons.
It's just one of those things, you know it when the time comes.
A former TV journalist, O'Regan was first elected alongside the Trudeau government in 2015 and joined cabinet in 2017. He held several portfolios in the years since. O'Regan says he will stay on as MP but will not seek re-election. Sources have told CBC News his replacement as Labour Minister will be Steve McKinnon, currently Leader of the government in the House. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is in Beijing tonight. That is the highest level visit to China since 2017, and it's a sign of efforts to thaw the notoriously frosty relations between the two countries. Here's Evan Dyer on why it's happening now.
A surprise visit already making news in China. Canada's Foreign Minister Melanie Joly is in Beijing for talks, and there seems to be a change of tone from a few years ago. In 2018, the arrest of Chinese executive Meng Wanzhou, a member of Communist Party royalty, angered Beijing. Days later, China arrested two Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, and things went downhill from there. But in February, Melanie Joly met her Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Sources tell CBC News it was Wang who issued the invitation.
I was surprised by the timing of it.
Vina Najibullah advocated for Michael Kovrig, her ex-husband, through over 1,000 days in Chinese detention. That issue is resolved, but new tensions have taken its place.
It's a visit that comes right after the NATO summit, which declared China as a decisive enabler of Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, and also named China as a systemic challenge to the whole alliance.
The visit reopens a channel to China at a time of tension because the country and the issues are just too big to ignore.
Sometimes they just outright steal through cyber espionage and other means.
The Biden administration says China isn't playing by the rules. Both the US and the European Union have put tariffs on China's cheap electric vehicles. Canada has also accused China of dumping cars at a price intended to corner the market.
Canada has just opened a consultation on electric vehicle tariffs, and it will finish by August 1st. But I think I'd be very surprised if Canada is out of step with what the US does.
Despite all those tensions, American and European officials continue to talk to their Chinese counterparts. Canada and China haven't really talked at this level for 7 years, and this one-day meeting is an icebreaker between two governments that need to keep channels open. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
History tonight in the Canadian Armed Forces. General Jenny Carignan is now the first woman to become the Chief of the Defence Staff. But as Ashley Burke tells us, Carignan assumes command of a military in crisis.
It's a new era for the Canadian Armed Forces. As General Jenny Carignan takes command.
You are the very first woman to ever become Chief of the Defence Staff, the very first in the G7 and in the G20.
Trained as a combat engineer,
our new Chief of the Defence Staff,
she's led NATO's mission in Iraq, tried to change the military's culture after a sexual misconduct crisis, and now this.
Today, I can say that I feel ready, poised, and supported.
The next step, inheriting an understaffed and under-equipped military during a perilous time. Canada's outgoing top soldier delivered a stark warning.
Our military history is one of unpreparedness at the outset of war. Let's not let that happen again. Urgency is required.
According to internal defense documents, under 60% of the military is ready to respond to a crisis. Almost half the equipment isn't serviceable, and there's a massive shortfall in staff.
The crisis in military personnel, there are close to 6,000 positions to fill.
Carignan says her top priority is addressing recruitment and laid out a timeline to counter growing threats from Russia and China.
I say we have about 5 years to get us close enough to be ready to counter those long-range type of threat.
An ambitious target on a historic day.
I'm going to get a little bit emotional here. I've done this because I love it.
Carignan says her new role is a sign to those excluded in the past that anything is possible.
I get now to lead these fantastic people in very difficult times. It's not going to be easy, folks. I'm telling you, there's nothing that is going to be easy going forward.
And the stakes going forward are high. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight for delivering decades of punchlines like few others.
What is this?
Oh, be careful with that.
We look back at the sitcom star and his remarkable legacy next. And we are, of course, continuing to watch the Republican National Convention, where in the next hour, Donald Trump will deliver his first speech since that shocking attempt on his life. We're back in 2. NASA's water-seeking lunar rover Viper has been grounded. The vehicle was designed to look for ice at the moon's southern pole, but the program was canceled today with NASA citing cost overruns and launch delays. Well, Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight as one of the most popular TV stars of his time. His publicist confirmed today the comedian died after a series of short illnesses at the age of 94. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson now with Newhart's legacy of laughter.
We've got a perfect marriage.
Emily, a perfect marriage is where the husband and the wife have the same IQ.
If Bob Newhart became famous for playing a regular, straight-laced guy in a world of eccentrics, he came by it honestly. Known for his stammering signature deadpan delivery, Newhart was a fixture on TV for decades. But he actually started far from the spotlight as an accountant before releasing a comedy album that made people take notice.
Which kind of revolutionized how comedy got disseminated, if you will, in North America.
It also opened doors for his long-running, beloved sitcoms. In the 1970s Bob Newhart show, he played a psychologist. In 1980s Newhart, he was an innkeeper. Different characters with the same core.
You don't hit on a style. I mean, you don't look at the other comedians that are working and say, oh, look, nobody's doing deadpan, so I'll do that. It was just my natural way of working.
A type of character that would inspire comics for generations, including Canada's Brent Butt, creator of Corner Gas, who tells us he made everything seem so real. On his shows, he was this grounding force amid the swirling nuttiness that made it somehow more legitimate than other sitcoms.
Bob Newhart!
But it wasn't until 2013 that Newhart's genius finally won him the award that long eluded him, a Primetime Emmy, when he appeared on The Big Bang Theory.
I thought you were dead.
I am. Oh, it's fantastic.
Even in his late 70s, he got big laughs from CBC audiences.
Appearing tonight is Bob Newhart. No, he's the comedian. So.
Proving that even in the often outrageous world of comedy, the boldest, most lasting act is being true to yourself. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go back to the Republican National Convention. where we're waiting for Donald Trump. He's right there. He's there, but he's not quite ready to speak yet. He will quite soon. This will be the moment where he accepts his party's nomination and deliver, of course, those first remarks since last weekend's attempt on his life. We'll discuss how that could play out in his speech later tonight. But first,
we did try to tell them there is valuables inside. They were not willing to listen.
WestJet customers say the airline refused to let them on their flight after they refused to check their carry-on. Their story next. After years of negotiations, all of Canada's major grocery store chains have now agreed to a new code of conduct. The last two holdouts, Walmart and Costco, now say they will sign on. The voluntary code is meant to level the playing field for suppliers and smaller retailers, but it's still not clear if the move will lower high grocery prices. Now to a couple calling out WestJet tonight, saying the airline turned them away because they refused to check their carry-on bags at the gate. Sophia Harris now with their story and why their story highlights a growing problem on Canadian Airlines.
Kalpana and Peru Kumanen packed their carry-on bags with valuable jewelry and medications they didn't want to part with on their flight from Toronto to Vancouver.
One of that is a painkiller for my wife.
But when they were about to board, they say a WestJet agent announced the plane had run out of carry-on space. So the couple had to check their bags. They refused.
I needed the medication on the plane. We did try to tell them there is valuables inside. Why don't you allow at least one baggage? They were not willing to listen.
Instead, WestJet banned the Kumanens from their round-trip flight. So they paid $2,000 to rebook last-minute tickets with Flair Airlines.
I was so mad on that day.
In an email, WestJet said the couple was refused transport due to behavior exhibited while boarding, and that it's common to request that carry-on items are checked when overhead space is limited. The case highlights a growing problem. Due to checked bag fees and fears of lost luggage, more passengers are traveling with carry-on.
The result is slower boarding processes and the fight for the valuable overhead bin space.
One solution some airlines have already adopted, charging for carry-on. Another remedy, enlarging overhead bin space, which United Airlines is doing. But some experts say the best solution is to crack down on oversized carry-on.
Airlines really have to manage and patrol and enforce those regulations, and it's the most brutal solution to the problem, but it works.
It's the right size.
Kumanen says the couple played by the rules as their luggage met WestJet's size limits. In response to a CBC inquiry, WestJet said the couple will be getting a refund for their missed flight. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Brampton, Ontario.
All right, it's time to take a closer look at the news shaping our world. And tonight, it's all about the U.S. election. Donald Trump officially takes his place atop the Republican presidential ticket.
Are you ready to hear from the next president of the United States?
The party believes the White House is within its grasp once again, its leader vowing to unify the country.
Look what happened.
After a shocking attempt on his life. So what does that look like, and will he deliver? Okay, so to help guide us through this pivotal moment, we have our panel back again tonight, Brian Stelter, Tia Mitchell, and Richard Madden. So thank you for being here. Tia, we know that this is a speech that Donald Trump himself changed after surviving this assassination attempt. It's the first time we're going to hear from him since that attack, and the RNC co-chair, Lara Trump, yes, a relation, says Americans are going to get a very different version of her father-in-law tonight, but I'm wondering, how different do you expect different to actually be?
Well, that's a good question, because I think that Donald Trump still wants to lean in on making this about being a fight for America, a fight for freedom, a fight against what he perceives as political, not just of himself, but of people who are aligned with him. And in that way, that's not very different, but it is in his delivery that might be a little different. The fact that it will now be framed against the backdrop of an assassination attempt will be different. And perhaps, and this is probably the part where we're going to be watching closely, perhaps the rhetoric could be dialed down a bit. That is the biggest question. How fiery will he be? How critical of President Biden will he be? What type of language will he use to make his point? Those things may shift, but we'll see in about an hour.
You know, it's so interesting, Tia, as you're talking, and there's no way you can know this, but we're running a little box at the bottom of the screen, and it's Hulk Hogan, who moments ago just took off one of his shirts. So as we talk about dialing down the rhetoric, you've got Hulk Hogan, you've got Dana White later on tonight. The fight motif courses through this. Brian, when Trump first ran for president, there was a lot of talk about the so-called, grown-ups around him. People said that pejoratively, and their intent was to say, to make him appeal to a broader electorate and to sort of tamp down some of what he might do. But now that it's his party, if he wins, there's no third term he needs to think about, no other electorate he needs to consider. So what are the implications of that policy-wise, and what might Trump 2.0 look like?
Right. He portrays himself as an amateur the first time around, and now he's an expert who actually knows how to wield the levers of government. That's at least the narrative that you hear from Trump world. What does that mean in practice? It means mass deportations of immigrants who are in the country illegally. It means dramatic tariffs against products that will likely cause products to cost more. It means further tax cuts for Republican donors, for billionaires and millionaires, maybe for the middle class as well. It means less engagement overseas. He has promised to end the war in Ukraine. Many critics fear that means he would give in to Vladimir Putin of Russia. This would be an unrestrained version of Donald Trump. And so that is why I would say to our audience watching, Don't believe the hype about a muted Donald Trump, about someone who's going to dial down the rhetoric. This is a man who's been dehumanizing his opponents for years, who claims that President Biden is destroying America. The only difference tonight is he's not going to use the word Biden. He's not going to talk about Biden or Kamala Harris directly. He's going to talk, though, about a nation being in decline, and he's going to portray himself as the only man who can save it. He's going to portray himself as the savior. And even though he's going to call for an end to the division and discord, I don't think we should fall for that, because we know he is a uniquely divisive figure in American life, and nothing he can say tonight will change that.
It's always interesting when people on either side of a divide call for unity, because they usually end up meaning they want the other side to shut up, you know,
Exactly.
Just come over here. Richard, as Brian was talking about the things that Trump believes in and may push for, his base is as solid as can be on those points. And it doesn't seem, I mean, polls have moved a little bit, but not all that much. So outside of the bubble of that base, who is he speaking to tonight? I mean, are we going to be hearing about Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio again, all those swing states?
Yeah, well, obviously you're right. They need to move beyond the diehards at tonight's convention, and it's pretty clear that this Trump-Vance ticket is designed to appeal to voters in those Rust Belt states that are key to this election. They're targeting the white working-class voters that were long the bedrock of the Democratic base, but they now appear to be up for grabs. In fact, just a few months ago, you'll recall, it was about grievance and revenge. This time, we're told Trump will have this message of unity, but as Brian said just moments ago, you know, it's unclear how long that message of unity will last. This time, though, Trump has J.D. Vance, whose life story and his message might resonate with voters in those Rust Belt states. And that's why their first rally together after this convention is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're also looking to flip Minnesota. That was once a deep blue state, but now it appears to be in play.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. I'm also keeping an eye on Hulk Hogan. Again, the contrast of you talking about calming down rhetoric, and he is firing them up. For people who might not have been following as closely as you have, Tia, we've been seeing these photos of Trump supporters wearing bandages over the right ears, you know, the sign of solidarity for Donald Trump. What is that? I'm just curious what you think when you see that. I know conventions are often circuses, but what strikes you about that?
Well, I think particularly for Donald Trump, we have to remember that he is a unique political figure in that he comes from the world of celebrity, of TV, of spectacle. And that's part of his appeal to people who have aligned with him. And in that way, the support for Donald Trump looks a lot like what you would see from a musician or a sports figure. And then that fandom kind of version of Trump's political structure, that's what you see playing out with the bandages and solidarity, with the slogans, with all the merch that you see here at the Republican National Convention. Again, he's not just a political figure to them. He's more than that. And you see in the way he's almost been deified here at the convention as the chosen one, as someone who a lot of Republicans believe has now been ordained, you know, that this is something that he's chosen to become president again. And it's just a very fervent fandom that goes beyond, I think, what we see normally in the political structure, but it allows him to kind of be a different type of politician, to not be so buttoned up, to say and do things that we've never tolerated from American politicians before.
Interesting. On this subject, one sort of last question to both Brian and Richard here. So many conversations this week about style and feelings and personality and tone, and you get wrapped up in that, right? But when this wraps up and people leave Milwaukee and start to think about what just happened there in terms of substance from what they actually heard this week, what's interesting, what's different, what voting for a Trump-Vance ticket might mean domestically or internationally. Richard, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, this is not the party of Reagan, Bush, Eisenhower. This is Trump firmly in grips of his vision. It's a new era of isolationism, economic nationalism, reshaping its role with NATO allies, stoking culture wars. So we'll see how this message resonates with voters. But keep in mind, if you look at polls, they're suggesting that there are a huge number of so-called double haters. These are voters who are turned off by both Trump and Biden. So does this new Trump-Vance message bring them any of these votes closer to their column or turn them away? Trump definitely knows how to put on a show, and this convention has been full of glitz. But the question is, will the images matter or will the policies matter? And we're living in an age of reality show politics, and perhaps their message might resonate more than boring substance that we'll hear from the other side of the aisle.
Right, but to counter the showbiz part of this, Brian, I'm not sure Richard missed anything there, but is there anything else that you thought of that you didn't hear?
The tug of war over what is America and who is America, which was really what the 2016 campaign was about, is once again what is at play here. So right now, Hulk Hogan talking about real Americans. He represents real Americans. If Trump regains power, that's the conversation. Who's real and who's not? Who stays and who goes? This is a party largely of white men, and you might think of this convention as a celebration of white men and their power within a diversifying country.
All right, as always, Brian Stelter, Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, thank you. You're going to have to stay right there, please do, because we're going to keep this conversation going as we await Donald Trump. Many eyes are on his opponent tonight, President Joe Biden. Biden has vowed to stay in the race, but could that change as pressure grows? That's next. As Joe Biden fights COVID and growing calls to step aside, reports now that he's more open to listening.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
While his VP delivers an energetic speech, her attention squarely on the Republicans.
If you claim to stand for unity, you need to do more than just use the word.
Democrats, though, are still seeking that unity within their own party. Tia, Brian, and Richard are back. So let's talk about Joe Biden. This is, everything that's happening in Milwaukee is happening as a speculation on Biden's future. Just ramps up with the reports that President Obama and Nancy Pelosi are all questioning the viability of Biden's candidacy. Richard, can you bring us up to speed on where things stand right now?
Yeah, it's not looking good for Joe Biden. In fact, in the last hour, another senator, a Democratic senator, just announced Joe Biden to step aside. And this is John Tester from Montana, who was in a tight re-election race there, issued a statement about an hour and a half ago. So we're seeing the walls closing in on Joe Biden. He is isolated at home in Rehoboth in Delaware with COVID. And many of these Democrats who are not taking Joe Biden's no for an answer and are urging him to step aside, including some top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, skeptical about his path forward, Adam Schiff, a key Democratic congressman who's about to become the next senator in California, all pressuring him to step aside. They're hoping that Biden uses this time in isolation to do a rethink of what's best for the party, what's best for the country, and what's best for his legacy.
Okay, Richard, just as you're talking, it's Eric Trump who's on the stage right now, and the Trump-Vance campaign released a statement saying they don't know who J.D. Vance will debate against because Kamala Harris hasn't picked her running mate yet. A little bit presumptuous there, but how is President Biden's future playing out on the convention floor there, Tia?
Well, I think that it's interesting because the Republican Party this whole week has been very united about, of course, President Trump, but they also quickly got on board with the selection of his running mate, J.D. Vance. And that's been a contrast to what we've seen all week with continued questions about the Democratic ticket. That being said, a lot of the conversation here has been not only on criticizing Joe Biden and his policies, but also Kamala Harris. Of course, they are kind of taking advantage of the discord in the Democratic Party by talking about, the fact that Kamala Harris could be the nominee, and for a lot of these speakers, most notably Nikki Haley, saying that Kamala Harris would be a dangerous nominee, that she could possibly be a worse nominee in their opinion than President Biden. Now, this again is politics. We know that the Trump campaign has been built around Joe Biden being his opponent, and they're not ready to consider the fact that it could be someone else. But for them, they've also been on the attack, taking advantage again of the discord within the Democratic Party.
Brian, I'm curious, what is Harris's strategy here? She's walking a pretty fine line, right? Like, what's she supposed to do? Because presumably she doesn't want to be seen as someone who wants to push Biden into the Potomac, but can she stay silent when these huge Democratic voices are speaking out?
Kamala Harris is reintroducing herself to America and the world right now. She's out on the campaign trail. She's holding events. She has a busy schedule, unlike Biden, who is at home with COVID. And Harris is getting a lot more attention. I noticed today when she gave a speech in the afternoon, all the major cable news networks were showing her live. That did not happen a month ago. So she is in a phase of reintroducing herself. And honestly, there's more and more polls that show she would be at least a slightly better contender against Trump than Biden. This is a situation where it's very hard for the Democratic Party to come back from this place. So many Democrats have already lined up against Biden, more in private than in public. But even in public, we've seen so many people criticizing Biden. How does he come back from that? How does the party come back from that? I would suggest to you we're past the point now where Biden's on the ticket. He's off the ticket. It's just a matter of when he says that. And now we're in this Kamala Harris phase. Will it be Kamala Harris or will it be others? But I don't see a way for Biden to come back from this dire place he's in politically.
Do you, Richard, any sense of where this is going for Biden? I mean, there's nonstop coverage of Donald Trump since he attempted his life. There's this,
Yeah, absolutely. With the unfortunate and tragic situation that happened last weekend, from a political standpoint, it turned the attention away from the troubles facing the Democrats, and those voices were muted for a while, but now they are back, and it's interesting to see how it's all been kind of coordinated. Chuck Schumer saying his disappointed, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, a letter that was leaked today by a ranking Democrat, Jamie Raskin of Maryland, calling for Biden to step aside. So the voices are growing louder. I think this is going to be a pivotal weekend for Joe Biden as he isolates at home, surrounded by his immediate family. Ultimately, it is up to Biden to decide whether he stays or goes. But I've covered this White House. I've covered Biden. He is known to be very stubborn. And usually when he gets pushed, he digs in. But it appears to be now the voices are growing louder and his inner circle is shrinking. And I agree with what Brian and others have said. I cannot see him bouncing back from this.
All right. Listen, thank you for guiding us through this convention. Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, and Brian Stelter. So this is what's happening at this very moment. That's Eric Trump with one of the last few speeches before Donald Trump hits the stage. We will have that for you next hour. But first, let's talk about Canada for a moment. Team Canada swimmers take a very special trip just days before they are set to compete in Paris.
I was just sitting there and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet.
How they honored Canadian veterans in our moment. Well, we are just about 1 week away from the Paris 2024 Olympics, and in between the training and preparation, Canada's swim team made a very special journey. They went to Juno Beach, the team that is working so hard to do Canada proud, coming face to face with the valor and sacrifice of Canadian soldiers 80 years ago, and that is our moment. Many of these swimmers are as young as the soldiers who once stormed the beach, a fact not lost on three-time Olympian Sydney Pickram.
I was just sitting there and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet. And like what people had to do to come here and to fight for everything for the Canadians.
They toured the Juno Beach Center, Yuri Kissel dedicating a poppy to his grandfather who fought in France.
It's pretty amazing being here. I'd always reflect on my grandfather and try to imagine what he went through. And coming to this museum and seeing the footage I saw really kind of helps paint that picture a little more clearly.
And the center's director said Canada's soldiers and its Olympians are united by the same values, even if they came to the beach for very different reasons.
I just wish the veterans were here to see it. I really would. And from where they are, I'm sure they're very proud.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, CBC is your home for Paris 2024. We'll have all the major events across our platforms, including the opening ceremony on July 26. I'll be there hosting alongside Scott Russell, and tune in all next week as we bring you the national from Paris in the lead up to the Olympics. So let's take you back to Milwaukee for a live look at the Republican National Convention. Tonight is Donald Trump's night. That is his son, Eric Trump. This is the culmination of the party's unification around the former president as the Republican ticket is now locked in. Trump is expected to speak in about 15 minutes. It's his first speech since the attempted assassination. We will carry it live. Trump has promised his message will be based on unity to calm the simmering tensions, but will he deliver? It's already certain the Democrats aren't buying it. Our live coverage continues on CBC News Network, GEM, and online in just minutes. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Stay with us. There is no longer any doubt. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. In just moments, he takes the stage in Milwaukee for the first time since an attempt on his life.
Look what happened.
Following that shocking moment, a vow to fight and a promise to unify. Tonight, his message to his party and his country. With just over 100 days until America votes, the Republicans crown their leader while Democrats are divided over theirs. Our correspondents are inside the convention to make sense of this moment in a dramatic race already unlike any other.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us for special coverage on a big night in U.S. politics. As President Joe Biden faces the biggest push yet to step aside, Donald Trump, in just minutes from now, will take center stage as he formally accepts the Republican nomination. So that's Trump arriving earlier tonight for the final night of his party's convention. He is expected to speak shortly in what will be his first speech since that assassination attempt, with so many watching to see what tone he strikes and whether he calls for unity. We are going to bring it to you live as it unfolds, and we have a team of correspondents standing by to help us try to make sense of all of it, starting with Katie Simpson. So, Katie, set the scene for us, please.
Thousands and thousands of Donald Trump's most energetic supporters are just waiting for this moment, waiting to hear from Donald Trump for this first time since what happened on Saturday, since a gunman tried to kill Donald Trump, the attempted assassination. And really, inside this arena, it has an element of political rally, wrestling match. It's a bit of a spectacle. And the question is, what version or what form will Donald Trump come out in? There's going to be a constant reminder of Saturday's events. We've seen him already. He has that bandage on his ear covering his wound. But is Donald Trump going to present himself with a bit of a different tone? Will he be kinder, softer, gentler, calling for unity? He and his family say he's a changed man after what happened on Saturday. But the question is that what he's going to present on this stage? Or will he lean into what we've seen before? Angry, divisive, airing his grievances and indulging in misinformation. So the big question is, what will Donald Trump say and how will he say it when he's on that stage? In the meantime, the people on the stage, the people who are speaking tonight, they've aired a lot of grievances for him. We heard from Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host. He leaned into Trump as a victim. We're hearing from his son, Eric Trump, who's talking about how Donald Trump has been unfairly prosecuted, saying he's been persecuted. And we heard a similar message from Donald Trump's lawyer as well. So those are the kinds of grievances. They're being aired by other people. So perhaps maybe Trump doesn't lean into that himself. But if you want to get a sense of what it's really like on the floor here, Adrienne, have a watch of this moment. One of the people Donald Trump of the Republican Party asked to speak was wrestler Hulk Hogan. And he had a pretty dramatic reveal on the stage.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother.
So that is the energy here inside the arena. A throwback to Hulk Hogan, sending the crowd into an unbelievable round of applause.
If anybody ever doubted that there's theater in politics, forget it, there is. Katie, you've been talking to people throughout the week there. I know you're really, this is one of your superpowers here, is getting people to open up. What did they tell you today?
Well, the people that we've spoken with today and throughout this week, these are Donald Trump's people. No one here is saying anything that could challenge him. They don't care that he's a convicted felon. They don't care about the ongoing court cases. They don't care about any of that, January 6th or whatever. whatever is a really, broad term for what's gone on with Donald Trump's political history. Have a listen to what they want to hear.
I've never seen so much unity in the Republican Party before. The tone has completely changed.
The vibe is fantastic. They keep saying once you've taken a bullet, you change. And everybody is so impressed with Trump getting right back up. Didn't miss a beat.
I trust in everything Donald Trump represents 100%. And I think he's going to bring out, more of the real side of him.
So we are now waiting for Donald Trump to make his way backstage. We just saw him sort of move through the arena. Members of Donald Trump's family are here. His daughter Ivanka and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, who all served in the last administration, they are here tonight. So again, everyone is waiting for that big moment.
And Katie, thank you. There's just one more speech, apparently, just time-wise, before Donald Trump is on stage. So they're getting close. That's Katie Simpson live in Milwaukee. So let's swing down to Chris Reyes, who is on the floor of the convention as the delegates eagerly await that speech to begin any minute. Chris, what's it like around you tonight?
Adrienne, it's loud in here. This is a tireless crowd. Remember, we're about 4 hours into this evening session, and the energy has not waned. If anything, it's more euphoric now. When they first started, everybody is on their feet, they're dancing. I'm gonna stop describing it for a second, Adrienne, and I'm actually gonna swing the camera so that you can take it in for yourself. You can see a lot of that Trump merch. This is a crowd that is not shy about their support for Donald Trump. And there's going to be a lot of conversations about some of the policy points delivered from that stage. But what I can tell you is how Trump has made this crowd feel tonight. They feel energized, they feel euphoric, and most of all, they feel proud. There is a lot of country pride here. This is a big love fest for the United States. They are state pride, and then most of all, they are Trump proud. You know, we heard just moments ago chanting, "We love you, Trump, we love you, Trump." We heard that chant of fight, 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 of course, echoing what Trump said just moments after he was shot. And that feeling is running through this entire room just moments before Trump hits that stage. And Adrienne, I want you to hear it directly from delegates. This gentleman has agreed to talk to me. There's a lot of, Trump hats and costumes here. But what is new is this right here. This is a bandage, similar to the one that Donald Trump is wearing today. Yes. Why did you come here with that today?
Well, I want to stand in solidarity with President Trump because he's trying to stand up for the country. He took a bullet for America. So if he can do that, then I can show solidarity by bandaging my ear too. I think everybody should bandage their ear. I think it'll make a movement.
You know, we both have a sight line to Trump right now. How did it make you feel to see him in person with that ear bandaged up?
Well, I felt sympathy for him, first of all. I mean, that he's here, the fact that he's here and not, laid up somewhere. He came out the very next day and got back on the campaign trail. If he can do that and work for the country, I think we can work for our respective delegates, be delegates for our states, and stand up for him in the country as well.
Right, sir, thank you for your time. Adrienne, we're hearing a lot of that. One of the other ways to describe how it feels to be on the floor is that it feels like church. There is a spiritual energy here for those attending this convention. They feel that it was God's hand that saved Trump. To them, Trump isn't just their leader. Trump is their hero. Trump is their savior.
Chris, it's so interesting when you say that. In terms of how Donald Trump responds tonight, I mean, most presidents and former presidents heap praise on the Secret Service. These are the people who genuinely and they do throw themselves in harm's way for a president. But what are people on the convention floor saying about the Secret Service? Because I understand it's been, there is, as you and I talk, there is Melania Trump. First time we're seeing her there at the convention. But what are people saying about the Secret Service there, Chris?
They're not talking about the Secret Service, Adrienne, as far as I can tell. They're using a lot of metaphors about how Trump was saved. You know, we heard a pastor from Michigan take that stage. He called that millimeter that allowed that bullet to miss Trump the miracle millimeter. That's how they're describing what happened on Saturday night in religious terms.
Okay, so you're not hearing the criticism of the Secret Service, because certainly online it is fierce, and people are still demanding answers. But as you said, you're in what effectively is a room that feels like a religious experience. So that's what they're dealing with there.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right. I mean, certainly not in this moment.
Okay, so that is Chris Reyes on the convention floor. Thank you, Chris. So now let's bring in Paul Hunter. Paul, your sense of what you think Trump is hoping or needs to achieve with that speech tonight.
Yeah, I think what is being told, Adrienne, is to not mess this up, to be disciplined. He's almost certainly being told, if you don't mess this up, if you are disciplined, this is yours. You've got this. Look, he's had a good run lately. The cards have turned up in his favor, right from the Supreme Court ruling on immunity, tossing out the documents case, Joe Biden at the debate, and in the days since. I mean, Democrats appear to be imploding at this point. And then Butler, right? And then the millimeter or centimeter that Chris was just talking about, that we all now know so well. And you saw the white patch on the man's ear. They were giving those out outside the security perimeter here today. It's become a thing, right? Everything has gone his way. So in his attempt to reach not the people in this room tonight, these are hardcore on side with Trump. It's the people out there, specifically the sliver of undecided voters. If you can imagine there are still any left in this country. That's not Trump, is it? No. Just checking just to make sure, Adrienne. To reach by television, the people that are tuning in tonight that would have tuned in anyway, but the extra people who are tuning in now because this is his first big event, first big chance to speak since that assassination attempt. Those are the people he's trying to reach, because they are the people that would prove right his advisors who are saying to him tonight, don't mess this up, be disciplined, because this is yours if you do that.
So if you get a chance, and when you get a chance to talk to people who are relatively close to him, what is the feeling you're getting from them about, what's been said about what he needs to do to reach those undecideds?
You're talking about tone again, aren't you? It's the word we've been using all week. Will the assassination attempt make him change his tone? I don't think anybody expects him to become all milk and honey all of a sudden, but be measured, right? Make it policy against policy, idea against idea. He still has to go after Joe Biden and Democrats. There's an election to win. That's politics, but not to be vulgar and dirty and seemingly cruel as many perceive him to be at times. I ran into Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, earlier to talk about this. Here's a clip of that exchange.
Some people have wondered whether he'll make a call to lower the temperature in sort of the politics of America right now. Do you think?
Well, he's the one that's been accused of being Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, threat to an authoritarian that's going to end democracy in America. He's the one that's been accused of these things. So I think it's perfectly legitimate to say the ideas of Joe Biden are terrible. Joe Biden's weakness has made America vulnerable. There is nothing outrageous about that. The founding fathers said very mean things about each other in that realm. But when you actually go out and try to dehumanize someone and basically describe them as the worst figures in human history, there's going to be some crazy person out there that's going to decide, well, maybe I should take him out and be a hero. I'm not claiming that's what happened in Pennsylvania. We'll learn more about that guy. We should get all the facts. But there's no doubt that if you want to talk about tone in politics, that's where the problems have come.
In other words, Marco Rubio is saying Democrats have a lot to learn when it comes to bringing down the tone as well. So we'll see what that means to Donald Trump, presuming he and Marco Rubio have had that conversation. I think the other thing to think about when it comes to tone, Adrienne, is, for those for all voters out there, but specifically for the undecided voters and specifically for those undecided voters in the handful of states that this election will turn on. Talk is talk, right? And I think the expectation is, to a degree, he will calm down his regular tone a degree tonight. The talk is talk, but how will he govern, right? That's the question that voters will have to ask themselves and decide for themselves, to believe Donald Trump or not. And as we can imagine, that is a question, A, it's hard to answer, but B, it carries with it serious and real consequences. Talk is talk, but how will he govern?
I have another question for you, Paul, about watching the speech as we're all about to do. So will the White House, right? And so there will probably be a television on in Rehoboth tonight with Joe Biden watching this. And what is your sense that the White House and Biden sort of need to take away from the feeling and the experience of this RNC right now?
That Donald Trump has everything going for him right now. And we talk about the advisors around Trump and what they may be saying. Well, we know what the people around, some of the people around Joe Biden are saying right now. It's people that he trusts, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Barack Obamas, which is, Joe, you can't do it. This is not on. And time is running extremely short. One of the expectations tonight is that he won't say the word Biden, Donald Trump. He doesn't know if he'll be facing Joe Biden as this campaign carries on. It may well be Kamala Harris. That's something else that Donald Trump has to think about. But as Joe Biden is watching this and his other senior advisors in the White House, it's to recognize it's Kid Rock coming out, Adrienne, not Donald Trump. I was wondering if it was going to be Donald Trump. Joe Biden has to ask himself that hard question. Can I beat the enthusiasm that he sees around Donald Trump? Can I beat the Donald Trump that he sees tonight on television? The one who maybe is not as harsh, not as divisive, all the things that Joe Biden has played on all this time, right? Remember back to 2020, right? There's a wide-held understanding that Joe Biden won because people voted against Donald Trump, right? They didn't vote for Joe Biden, I'm generalizing here. They voted against Donald Trump, right? If Donald Trump comes out tonight, a kinder, gentler Donald Trump, Joe Biden will be told, not may be told, will be told that softens the argument that he has run on. So this makes it all the more complicated for Joe Biden, and he is certain to be thinking about all of this tonight as he watches it, as his advisors watch it, because Donald Trump's going to put on a show tonight.
He sure is. There's one going on behind you right now with screens full of fire and Kid Rock yelling about fight. Donald Trump may end up softening his tone, but his surrogates are making the message loud and clear for him. We're only a few minutes away from the speech. We'll get back into it. Paul Hunter, live in Milwaukee. Thanks, Paul. So as we wait for Trump's speech, the first since the attempt on his life, we want to turn to his opponent, Joe Biden, who we've just been talking about. He obviously is facing growing pressure to step aside. Stark contrast to the Republican show of solidarity. Democrats appear divided over their leader, with reports coming out now that Barack Obama is among those advising Joe Biden to bow out. And as Sasha Petrusik explains, Biden seems powerless to stop it.
The first woman vice president.
With Joe Biden down with COVID,
Kamala Harris.
It was up to Vice President Kamala Harris to carry the Democratic campaign for the White House.
You cannot claim you stand for unity if you are pushing an agenda that deprives whole groups of Americans of basic freedoms, opportunity, and dignity.
Going after Republicans with a vigor some say President Joe Biden is missing.
But I think that's where you see someone like Vice President Harris really taking it to Donald Trump.
The timing of Biden's COVID isolation couldn't be worse for Democrats as questions mount about whether the 81-year-old should step aside.
The millionaires pay 1%.
Beginning after a weak debate performance, snowballing as big donors and members of Congress went public.
Again, it's his decision because he has the delegates and the pledged delegates, but frankly, I think there's real concern.
But it's the reports now of growing private concerns deepening Biden's crisis. Of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and now former President Barack Obama, all reportedly warning Biden he's likely to lose and bring his party down with him.
Today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
At their convention, seen by jubilant Republicans as weakness.
They know they're fixing to get their teeth kicked in.
Experts say public polls have not reflected a disastrous drop-off in support.
And so I do believe that the race hasn't changed as much as perhaps we would want to think it has.
And publicly, at least, aides say Biden remains steadfast. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, let's go back to Milwaukee. Can't get enough of Paul Hunter, who is on the floor there. I suspect you can't even hear yourself think. You certainly probably can't hear me. I'm wondering, though, I know you got out to get some peace and quiet earlier and have kind of a thoughtful conversation with people. Can you tell me about it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the great things of any political convention, as you well know, Adrienne, is to get out and talk to people. This isn't people in the wild. This is people who are here as Republicans who are going to support Donald Trump. So you kind of know what you're in for in a way, but it's always a fun time. And, we've talked a lot about, the people that Trump is trying to reach tonight through the camera and the people who are already the converted, supporters that are filling this room. I suspect 3 of the people that I spoke with this afternoon are in here somewhere tonight. They were delegates from Arizona, one of those battleground states we keep talking about. Interestingly, it's one of the ones that has, per polls, tilted leaning Trump's way the last little while as Democrats have had their struggles. The bullet has flown by and different things have happened. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia now. They were toss-ups. Now they're kind of leaning Trumpy. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they're still toss-ups. Anyway, 3 delegates from Arizona. I call them the ladies in red because they had these lovely red T-shirts on. They are Republican Democrats after all. To ask them what they expected from the speech tonight. Here they are. What do you want to hear from Donald Trump?
Whatever Donald Trump wants to tell me. It'll be perfect. You don't tell Donald Trump what to do. Donald Trump knows what he's doing, and so I don't question. If he decides the tone has to come up, then go up with it. If you want to tone it down, tone it down. I don't really care. I'm just so grateful that he's still here. He's still willing to give up his life, literally now, for us. He loves America. He loves this country. He loves the people, and he loves all of the support that he's receiving. And tonight in that speech, I feel that's what's going to come across, the love that he has for all of us.
So there you have it, Adrienne. It's going to be perfect. They said so. It's funny. Last little while in here, we've seen Donald Trump has left that VIP box and gone backstage, I guess. If they have a green room here, he's in it, going over this, unbelievably significant speech for him. And I can't help but think we talked about this a little bit last night. Every single time that he has come into the auditorium and the cheers, etc., he's I don't want to read too much into his appearance, but he seems to have notched down the swagger just that little bit. And I've found it kind of interesting. Not just the first time, but as well the second time and again tonight. It's like he's, subdued, isn't it? He does raise his fist, but it's not way up in the air. And I don't know if that means something has changed, right? I hate to overanalyze these things, but he just has the appearance of a different guy. And will that translate into his speech. We do know, as you were reporting earlier, that he's been, as we're led to believe, it's a complete rewrite. But certainly large chunks of it have been rewritten to kind of capture his frame of mind, his thinking, where his heart is, where his thoughts are, where his politics are, subsequent to having a bullet miss him by a centimeter. Has it changed him? He said it did at that private event. I guess it was this morning. You know, are we to believe him? Do you ever believe Donald Trump? Some would say, right? He's got everything on the line here. We'll find out soon enough.
It's hard to imagine it doesn't change you, that you don't have in quiet moments, perhaps after the doctors have patched up your ear, that you don't sit there and think, how am I still here? But also perhaps, and maybe I'm just naive here, we're in a stage of surrogate swagger. He doesn't need to do it anymore. He set the table, and now he just has to be there and let Dana White from the UFC, who's behind you right now, Paul, at the podium, do all the talking after Hulk Hogan ripped off his shirt and Kid Rock, you know, talked about fighting with pictures of flames.
Or Eric Trump, or Donald Trump Jr. He's got a lot of surrogates who can do that. You're right. No, exactly. And that's arguably smart politics. At the end of the day, you can still get that message out to people that want to hear it, to people who believe they need to hear that, while Donald Trump can still be milk and honey to a degree, if it's possible for Donald Trump to be milk and honey, if that's what the advice is for him, if it has changed him. It's kind of weird to even be having this conversation, Adrienne. You know what I mean? It's still weird to think back to Saturday and to think what happened. And he is 78 years old, as he has said before. You know, it's like one turn of the head the other way. Yeah. What caused him to turn his head that way? You know, it's as one of the, you know, to bring an aspect of his base into it, one of the ladies in red, you know, said, angel wings on the bullet, right? Because a lot of people here believe that plays into this notion that Trump is their savior, that Trump is the chosen one, that Trump is the one that will lead this country to the promised land. It all works together. As I say, it's been a good run for Donald Trump. We'll see if he can carry that run forward shortly.
Indeed. Brian Stelter has been listening to this conversation. Brian, you know, this evening will end tonight. People will go home, the balloons will drop, they will pop, people will leave. And the next conversation will be about Joe Biden. It'll be about the polls, it'll be about Joe Biden. And I have what is maybe a naive question here, so forgive me. But Joe Biden, the Biden-Harris campaign have raised a lot of money. They have they've got pretty big coffers. What happens if Biden doesn't end up being on the ticket and it's not clear that it's Harris? What happens to all that money?
Some of that money would end up with the Democratic nominee after the convention. In other cases, some of the donors might claw that money back and then give it to whoever the nominee is. But it is murky. It is complicated. There are different answers depending on who donated to what arm of what organization. And the money is an important part of this story. It is one of the reasons why Biden finds himself so alone and so isolated right now, because there are so many donors that either withdrawn their money, saying they're not going to give any more, or are raising serious concerns. It's an amazing, from a historical perspective, right? 3 years ago, Joe Biden took office promising calm and serenity, an end to the chaos of the Trump years. Trump looked elderly, disgraced, and diminished. He was out. He was on the way out. He was excommunicated from Washington, D.C. because of the coup attempt. And yet here we are watching this party in Donald Trump's honor as he reclaims control of the party. And it's the Democrats that are in disarray. It's Biden in disarray. But make no mistake, after the Democratic convention, the Democrats will be united as well. And it'll be much more of a fair fight between these two sides. And, you know, you're talking about Hulk Hogan, now Dana White, Kid Rock, all these Republican celebrities. it really emphasizes the masculine versus feminine nature of this American election. Axios described it really well a couple of days ago, saying it's Donald Trump's chest-beating macho appeal versus Biden's softer all-gender inclusivity. And I think that's what we're seeing from this Republican programming. They're trying to portray this, and they're trying to appeal to white male voters, including some who don't care anything about politics, but who might like a good show or a good Kid Rock concert.
Okay, so Brian, we are listening to what is effectively Donald Trump's walk-on song. It's Lee Greenwood doing God Bless the USA, and we know what that means. It means that Donald Trump is probably the next person you're going to see here. So why don't we take a moment and look and listen to what is happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention right now. About to speak. On the left of your frame, you will see a firefighter's jacket. That is for Corey Comptor, the man who was killed at that Trump rally on Saturday. Corey Comparator. Donald Trump spoke with his family and the family of two other people who were wounded that day. And Corey's presence looms large here at the RNC, but no presence looms larger than that of Donald Trump, who is taking in this moment before he heads to that lectern to begin that speech. It could be as long as 90 minutes, so buckle up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Wow. And thank you, Dana. Thank you, Kid Rock, sometimes referred to as Bob. And thank you, Lee, right from the beginning. Thank you very much. What a talent. What a beautiful, beautiful song. Thank you. Friends, delegates, and fellow citizens, I stand before you this evening with a message of confidence, strength, and hope. 4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together, we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we will do it right. We're going to do it right. Let me begin this evening by expressing my gratitude to the American people for your outpouring of love and support following the assassination attempt at my rally on Saturday. As you already know, the assassin's bullet came within a quarter of an inch of taking my life. So many people have asked me, what happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. It was a warm, beautiful day in the early evening in Butler Township in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Music was loudly playing, and the campaign was doing really well. I went to the stage, and the crowd was cheering wildly. Everybody was happy. I began speaking very strongly, powerfully, and happily, because I was discussing the great job my administration did on immigration at the southern border. We were very proud of it. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart of border crossings under my leadership. The numbers were absolutely amazing. In order to see the chart, I started to, like this, turn to my right and was ready to begin a little bit further turn, which I'm very lucky I didn't do, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did. They rushed to the stage. These are great people at great risk, I will tell you, and pounced on top of me so that I would be protected. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. The most incredible aspect of what took place on that terrible evening in the fading sun was actually seen later. In almost all cases, as you probably know, and when even a single bullet is fired, just a single bullet, and we had many bullets that were being fired, crowds run for the exits or stampede, but not in this case. It's very unusual. This massive crowd of tens of thousands of people stood by and didn't move an inch. In fact, many of them bravely but automatically stood up looking for where the sniper would be. They knew immediately it was a sniper. And then began pointing at him. You can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. Nobody ran, and by not stampeding, many lives were saved. But that isn't the reason that they didn't move. The reason is that they knew I was in very serious trouble. They saw it. They saw me go down. They saw the blood and thought, actually most did, that I was dead. They knew it was a shot to the head. They saw the blood. And there's an interesting statistic. The ears are the bloodiest part. If something happens with the ears, they bleed more than any other part of the body. For whatever reason, the doctors told me that. I said, why is there so much blood? He said, it's the ears. They bleed more. So we learned something, but this beautiful crowd, they didn't want to leave me. They knew I was in trouble. They didn't want to leave me. And you can see that love written all over their faces. Incredible people. They're incredible people. Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them, missing them by a very small amount of inches. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper, from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life, took him out. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah. Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment. Probably was. When I rose surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you. Once my clenched fist went up, and it was high into the air. You've all seen that. The crowd realized I was okay and roared with pride for our country like no crowd I have ever heard before. Never heard anything like it. For the rest of my life, I will be grateful for the love shown by that giant audience of patriots that stood bravely on that fateful evening in Pennsylvania. Tragically, the shooter claimed the life of one of our fellow Americans, Corey. comparator, unbelievable person, everybody tells me. Unbelievable. And seriously wounded. 2 other great warriors, spoke to them today. David Dutch and James Copenhaver. 2 great people. I also spoke to all 3 families of these tremendous people. Our love and prayers are with them, and always will be. We're never going to forget them. They came for a great rally. They were serious Trumpsters, I want to tell you. They were serious Trumpsters, and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and 2 precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was. I want to thank the fire department and the family for sending his helmet, his outfit, and it was just something, and they're going to do something very special when they get it. But we did something which cannot match what happened, not even close. But I am very proud to say that over the past few days, we've raised $6.3 million for the families of David, James, and Corey, including from a friend of mine just called up. He sent me a check right here. I just got it. $1 million from Dan Newland. Thank you, Dan. And again, when speaking to the family, I told them, I said, well, I'm going to be sending you a lot of money, but it can't compensate. They all said the same thing. You're right, sir. We appreciate so much what you're doing, but nothing can take the place in the case of Corey. And the other 2, by the way, they were very, very seriously injured, but now they're doing very well. They're going to be okay. They're going to be doing very well. They're warriors. So now I ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of our friend Corey. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for others. This is the spirit that forged America in her darkest hours, and this is the love that will lead America back to the summit of human achievement and greatness. This is what we need. Despite such a heinous attack, we unite this evening more determined than ever. I am more determined than ever, and so are you. So is everybody in this room. Thank you very much. Our resolve is unbroken and our purpose is unchanged to deliver a government that serves the American people better than ever before. Nothing will stop me in this mission because our vision is righteous and our cause is pure. No matter what obstacle comes our way, we will not break, we will not bend, we will not back down, and I will never stop fighting for you, your family, and our magnificent country. Never. And everything I have to give with all of the energy and fight in my heart and soul, I pledge to our nation tonight. Thank you very much. I pledge that to our nation. We're going to turn our nation around, and we're going to do it very quickly. Thank you. This election should be about the issues facing our country and how to make America successful, safe, free, and great again. In an age when our politics too often divide us, now is the time to remember that we are all fellow citizens. We are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we must not criminalize dissent or demonize political disagreement, which is what's been happening in our country lately at a level that nobody has ever seen before. In that spirit, the Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system and labeling their political opponent as an enemy of democracy. Especially since that is not true. In fact, I am the one saving democracy for the people of our country. And very big news, as you probably just read, on Monday a major ruling was handed down from a highly respected federal judge in Florida, Eileen Cannon, finding that the prosecutor and the fake documents case against me were totally unconstitutional, and the entire case was thrown out of court. With all of that publicity, thrown out of court. If Democrats want to unify our country, they should drop these partisan witch hunts, which I have been going through for approximately 8 years. And they should do that without delay and allow an election to proceed that is worthy of our people. We're going to win it anyway, but worthy of our people. On this journey, I am deeply honored to be joined by my amazing wife, Melania. And Melania, thank you very much. You also did something really beautiful, a letter to America calling for national unity, and it really took the Republican Party by surprise. I will tell you, it was beautiful. In fact, some very serious people said that we should take that letter and put it as part of the Republican platform. That would be an honor, wouldn't it? Right, Mr. Congressman? But it captivated so many, so I also want to thank my entire family for being here. Don, Kimberly, Ivanka and Jared, Eric and Lara, Tiffany and Michael, Barron. We love our Barron. And of course, my 10 wonderful grandchildren. You saw a few of them up there on my lap before. And how good was Dana? Was Dana good? I mean, was he good? He was on probably the only vacation he's had in about, maybe ever, because he works, but about 10 years with his wife, very far away. I won't tell you where, but very, very far away, beautiful place. And my people called, and he said, I won't be able to do it. This is many, many years. I promised my wife I can't do it. And they came in, they said, Dana won't be able to do it, because he was my first, second, and third choice. I said, well, that's too bad, but I understand he's away, and that's good. It's good for him. And that was it. About 30 minutes later, she came back in, sir, Dana just called. He's going to do it. And his wife, she said, you can't turn him down. You just can't do it. You have to go. That's a good wife. So he got on a plane. He got here a little while ago. Now he's going to get on the plane in a little while, and he's going to go back home to his wife. But they're great, and I just want to thank her and him and their whole family, because that's not easy. And Kid Rock, same thing. Called, he said, I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part, because, Kid does his great song, Big, Big Monster song. I had no idea. He became a friend of mine over the last 10 years. And he's amazing. Everyone loves him. I didn't even know how big he was. He has rallies, 35, 40,000 people he gets every time he goes out. I think he's making so much money, he doesn't know what the hell to do with it. You want to know? And then we have my other friend, and I've known him so long, and we took that song, and it was a big success, but we made that. I saw a chart of great songs to America. That was #1 on the chart recently, #1. So that's Lee Greenwood, very special, beautiful person. He's a beautiful man. But they all wanted to be here. They called. And how about the Hulkster? How good was he? Is he up? Where is he? Boy, oh boy. They may call that entertainment. I know about entertainment, but when he used to lift a 350-pound man over his shoulders and then bench press him 2 rows into the audience, I say, maybe entertainment, but he is one strong son of a gun. I will tell you, I watched it many times. There aren't a lot of entertainers that can do that, right? You were fantastic. Thank you very much. Followed by Eric. What was that all about? Boy, that was good. I didn't want to really come up here. But he was so great, and he's such a good young man. He went through a lot of trouble, and Don last night was incredible. They went through so much trouble. They got subpoenaed more than any people probably in the history of the United States. Every week they get another subpoena from the Democrats, crazy Nancy Pelosi, the whole thing, just boom, boom, boom. They've got to stop that, because they're destroying our country. We have to work on making America great again, not on beating people. And we won. We beat them and all. We beat them on the impeachments. We beat them on indictments. We beat them. But the time that you have to spend, if they would devote that genius to helping our country, we'd have a much stronger and better country. And Jason, the biggest star in country music. Jason, thank you for being here. Jason, thank you very much. Jason Aldean, he's good. I like his wife even better, by the way. She's here. Thank you, Jason. But I'm thrilled to have a new friend and partner fighting by my side. The next Vice President of the United States, the current Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, and his incredible wife, Usha. He's going to be a great vice president. He's going to be great. He'll be with this country and with this movement, greatest movement in the history of our country, Make America Great Again. When they criticize it, they say, we're going to try and stop MAGA. I said, MAGA is Make America Great Again. What are you going to stop? There's nothing to stop. Then they say, oh, that's right. It's very tough to fight it. And all of the people that
Welcome to the National on CBC television. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. You are watching Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump deliver his speech at the party's national convention, his first speech since an attempt on his life. Let's keep listening.
So, JD, you're going to be doing this for a long time. Enjoy the ride. And a very special thank you to the extraordinary people of Milwaukee and the great state of... Oh, there they are. There they are. You are so easy to spot. And Green Bay's going to have a good team this year, right? They're going to have a good team. They're going to have a good team. Most of the audience doesn't like it, but it's true. You're going to have a very good team this year. And by the way, Wisconsin, we are spending over $250 million here creating jobs and other economic development all over the place. So I hope you will remember this in November and give us your vote. I am trying to buy your vote. I'll be honest about that. And I promise we will make Wisconsin great again. We're going to make it. Thank you, Mr. Governor. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm here tonight to lay out a vision for the whole nation, to every citizen, whether you're a young or old man or woman, Democrat, Republican, or independent, black or white, Asian or Hispanic. I extend to you a hand of loyalty and of friendship. Together we will lead America to new heights of greatness like the world has never seen before. We were right there in the first term. We got hit with COVID. We did a great job. Nobody knew what it was, but nobody's ever seen an economy pre-COVID. And then we handed over a stock market that was substantially higher than just prior to COVID. Coming in, did a great job. Never got credit for that. We got credit for the war and defeating ISIS and so many things, the great economy, the biggest tax cuts ever, the biggest regulation cuts ever, the creation of Space Force, the rebuilding of our military. We did so much. We did so much. Right to try. Right to try is a big deal. We got right to try. They were trying to get that for 52 years. Somebody's terminally ill. And hopefully there's nobody in this audience, but it does happen a lot. They're terminally ill and they can't use our new space-age drugs and other things that we are way ahead. We have the greatest doctors in the world, the greatest laboratories in the world, and you can't do it. They've been trying to get that approved for 52 years. Wasn't that easy? The insurance companies didn't want to do it. They didn't want the risk. The labs didn't want to do it because if it didn't work, people are pretty far down the line toward death. They didn't want to do it. The doctors didn't want to have it on their records, so I got everybody into an office. 52 years they tried. Sounds simple, but it's not. And I got them to agree that somebody that needs it will, instead of going to Asia or Europe or someplace, or if you have no money going home and dying, just die. We got them to sign an agreement, agree to it, where they're not going to sue anybody. They're going to get all of this stuff. They're going to get it really fast. And what's happened is we're saving thousands and thousands of lives. It's incredible. Right to try. It's a great feeling. Under our leadership, the United States will be respected again. No nation will question our power. No enemy will doubt our might. Our borders will be totally secure. Our economy will soar. We will return law and order to our streets, patriotism to our schools, and importantly, we will restore peace, stability, and harmony all throughout the world. But to achieve this future, we must first rescue our nation from failed and even incompetent leadership. We have totally incompetent leadership. This will be the most important election in the history of our country. Under the current administration, we are indeed a nation in decline. We have an inflation crisis that is making life unaffordable, ravaging the incomes of working and low-income families, and crushing, just simply crushing our people like never before. They've never seen anything like it. We also have an illegal immigration crisis, and it's taking place right now as we sit here in this beautiful arena. It's a massive invasion at our southern border that has spread misery, crime, poverty, disease, and destruction to communities all across our land. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Then there's an international crisis, the likes of which the world has seldom been part of. Nobody can believe what's happening. War is now raging in Europe and the Middle East. A growing specter of conflict hangs over Taiwan, Korea, the Philippines, and all of Asia. And our planet is teetering on the edge of World War III. And this will be a war like no other war because of weaponry. The weapons are no longer army tanks going back and forth shooting at each other. These weapons are obliteration. It's time for a change. This administration can't come close to solving the problems. We're dealing with very tough, very fierce people. They're fierce people. And we don't have fierce people. We have people that are a lot less than fierce, except when it comes to cheating on elections and a couple of other things. Then they're fierce. Then they're fierce. So tonight, I make this pledge to the great people of America. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. We will drill, baby, drill. Can you believe what they're doing? But by doing that, we will lead a large-scale decline in prices. Prices will start to come down. Energy raised it. They took our energy policies and destroyed them. Then they immediately went back to them, but by that time, so much was lost. But we will do it at levels that nobody's ever seen before, and we'll end lots of different things. We'll start paying off debt and start lowering taxes even further. We gave you the largest tax cut. We'll do it more. You know, people don't realize I brought taxes way down, way down, and yet we took in more revenues the following year than we did when the tax rate was much higher. Most people said, how did you do that? Because it was incentive. Everybody was coming to the country. They were bringing back billions and billions of dollars into our country. The companies made it impossible to bring it back. The tax rate was too high, and the legal complications were far too great. I changed both of them, and hundreds of billions of dollars by Apple and so many other companies were brought back into our nation, and we had an economy the likes of which no nation had ever seen. China, we were beating them at levels that were incredible. And they know it. They know it. We'll do it again, but we'll do it even better. I will end the illegal immigration crisis by closing our border and finishing the wall, most of which I've already built. On the wall, we were dealing with a very difficult Congress. And I said, oh, that's okay. We won't go to Congress. I call it an invasion. We gave our military almost $800 billion. I said, I'm going to take a little of that money because this is an invasion. And we built, most of the wall is already built. And we built it through using the funds because what's better than that? We have to stop the invasion into our country that's killing hundreds of thousands of people a year. We're not going to let that happen. I will end every single international crisis that the current administration has created, including the horrible war with Russia and Ukraine, which would have never happened if I was president, and the war caused by the attack on Israel, which would have never happened if I was president. Iran was broke. Iran had no money. Now Iran has $250 billion. They made it all over the last 2.5 years. They were broke. I watched the other day on a show called Deface the Nation. Has anyone seen it? And they had a congressman who was a Democrat say, well, whether you like him or not, Iran was broke dealing with Trump. I told China and other countries, if you buy from Iran, we will not let you do any business in this country, and we will put tariffs on every product you do send in of 100% or more. And they said to me, well, I think that's about it. They weren't going to buy any oil. And they were ready to make a deal. Iran was going to make a deal with us. And then we had that horrible, horrible result that we'll never let happen again. The election result, we're never going to let that happen again. They used COVID to cheat. We're never going to let it happen again. And they took off all the sanctions, and they did everything possible for Iran. And now Iran is very close to having a nuclear weapon, which would have never happened. This is a shame what this administration, the damage that this administration has done. And I say it often, if you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, added them up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. I'm only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time. The damage that he's done to this country is unthinkable. It's unthinkable. Together we will restore vision, strength, competence, and we're going to have a thing called common sense making most of our decisions, actually. It's all common sense. Just a few short years ago, under my presidency, we had the most secure border and best economy in the history of our country, in the history of the world. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had never done anything like it. We were beating every country, including China, by leaps and bounds. Nobody had seen anything like it. We had no inflation. Soaring incomes were going. Nobody can believe it. You can't believe what happened 4 years ago is happening now in reverse. And the world was at peace. Inflation has been a killer for our country. No matter what you make it, it doesn't matter, because inflation is eating you alive. People that were putting away money, they were making great wages, the highest they've ever made, but they were putting away a lot of money. Now they are just being destroyed. They're not putting away anything. They're barely living. They're going into savings accounts. They're taking out their money to live because of inflation. Inflation, remember, it's called a country buster. You can go back to Germany from 100 years ago. You can go back to any country that suffered great inflation. We've suffered the worst inflation we've ever had. But go back and see what's happened to those countries. We've had the worst inflation we've ever had under this person. But in less than 4 years, our opponents have turned incredible success into unparalleled tragedy and failure. It's been a tremendous failure. Today, our cities are flooded with illegal aliens. Americans are being squeezed out of the labor force, and their jobs are taken. And by the way, you know who's taking the jobs that are created? 107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens. And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population, because they're taking the jobs from our black population, our Hispanic population, and they're also taking them from unions. The unions are suffering because of it. Thank you. Thank you. I like you too. Thank you very much. Inflation has wiped out the life savings of our citizens and forced the middle class into a state of depression and despair. That's what it is. It's despair and depression. We cannot and will not let this continue. Less than 4 years ago, we were a great nation, and we will soon be a great nation again. We're going to be a great nation again. Thank you. With proper leadership, every disaster we are now enduring will be fixed, and it will be fixed very, very quickly. So tonight, whether you've supported me in the past or not, I hope you will support me in the future, because I will bring back the American dream. That's what we're going to do. You don't even hear about the American dream anymore. With great humility, I am asking you to be excited about the future of our country. Be excited. Be excited. And by the way, the news reports, look at all of those big networks. Look at them. They're all here. But every one of them has said this could be the most organized, best run, and most enthusiastic convention of either party that they've ever seen. Every single one. And it's true. It's true. And there's love in the room. There's great love in the room. So I better finish strong. Otherwise, we'll blow it, and we can't let that happen. Now, this was great. All of the great people that spoke, and everybody hit a home run. I mean, there's not one that I can think of where I said, oh, gee, that wasn't great. Every single person. I refuse to be the only one. Don't do that to me. They're already getting ready. See, I gave them an idea. Now, this was a great convention. This was, I think we're actually going to go home and miss it. You know, usually with a first of all, look at these crowds. You'd never have this at a convention. Look at these crowds. Love. It's about love. This week, the entire Republican Party has formally adopted an agenda for America's renewal, and you saw that agenda. And it's very short compared to the long, boring, meaningless agendas of the past, including the Democrats. They write these things that are hundreds of pages long, and they never read them after they're done. In their case, fortunately, they don't read them because they're pretty bad. It's a series of bold promises that we will swiftly implement when you give us a Republican House. And Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. We have our great Speaker of the House with us tonight. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you. A Republican Senate, we have many senators here. And send me back to our beautiful White House just a few short months from now. We're talking about just months. It can't come fast enough. We have to get it done. First, we must get economic relief to our citizens. Starting on day one, we will drive down prices and make America affordable again. We have to make it affordable. It's not affordable. People can't live like this. Under this administration, our current administration, groceries are up 57%, gasoline is up 60 and 70%, mortgage rates have quadrupled. And the fact is, it doesn't matter what they are because you can't get the money anyway. You can't buy houses. Young people can't get any financing to buy a house. The total household costs have increased an average of $28,000 per family under this administration. Republicans have a plan to bring down prices and bring them down very, very rapidly. By slashing energy costs, we will in turn reduce the cost of transportation, manufacturing, and all household goods. So much starts with energy. And remember, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any other country by far. We are a nation that has the opportunity to make an absolute fortune with its energy. We have it, and China doesn't. Under the Trump administration, just 3.5 years ago, we were energy independent. But soon, we will actually be better than that. We will be energy dominant and supply not only ourselves, but we will supply the rest of the world with numbers that nobody has ever seen, and we will reduce our debt $36 trillion. We will start reducing that, and we will also reduce your taxes still further. Next, and by the way, they want to raise your taxes 4 times, think of it. And all my life I grew up watching politicians. I always loved politics, I guess. I was on the other side. I'd watched and they were always talking about, we will give you a tax cut. We will give you a tax cut. My whole life I was watching, I will give you a tax cut, right, Mr. Congressman? That's all they talked about. This is the only administration that said, we're going to raise your taxes by 4 times what you're paying now, and people are supposed to vote for them? I've never heard it. You're paying too much. We're going to reduce your taxes still further. We gave you the biggest one, as I said. We're going to give you more, and it's going to lead to tremendous growth. We want growth in our country. That's what's going to pay off our debt. And next, we will end the ridiculous and actually incredible waste of taxpayer dollars that is fueling the inflation crisis. They spent trillions of dollars on things having to do with the Green New Scam. It's a scam. And that's caused tremendous inflationary pressures in addition to the cost of energy. And all of the trillions of dollars that are sitting there not yet spent, we will redirect that money for important projects like roads, bridges, dams, and we will not allow it to be spent on meaningless Green New Scam ideas. And I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day 1. Thereby saving the U.S. auto industry from complete obliteration, which is happening right now, and saving U.S. customers thousands and thousands of dollars per car. And right now, as we speak, large factories just started are being built across the border in Mexico. So with all the other things happening on our border, and they're being built by China to make cars and to sell them into our country. No tax, no anything. The United Auto Workers ought to be ashamed for allowing this to happen. And the leader of the United Auto Workers should be fired immediately. And every single auto worker, union and non-union, should be voting for Donald Trump, because we're going to bring back car manufacturing, and we're going to bring it back fast. They're building some of the largest auto plants anywhere in the world. Think of it, in the world. We're going to bring it back. We're going to make them. We don't mind that happening, but those plants are going to be built in the United States, and our people are going to man those plants. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States. We have long been taken advantage of by other countries. And think of it, oftentimes these other countries are considered so-called allies. They've taken advantage of us for years. We lose jobs, we lose revenue, and they gain everything and wipe out our businesses, wipe out our people. I stopped it for 4 years. I stopped it. And we're really ready to make changes like nobody had seen before. And remember, USMCA, I got rid of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, and replaced it with USMCA, which is, they say, the best trade deal ever made. Actually, probably the best trade deal was the deal I made with China, where they buy $50 billion worth of our product. They were buying nothing. They buy $50 billion worth. They had to. But I don't even talk about it because of COVID. I don't even mention it, frankly, because of what happened with the China virus. We will not let countries come in, take our jobs, and plunder our nation. They come and do that. They plunder our nation. The way they will sell their product in America is to build it in America. Very simple. Build it in America and only in America. And this very simple formula, and Congress has to go along with us, and they will. This very simple formula will create massive numbers of jobs. We will take over the auto industry again, and many, many, hundreds of thousands of jobs. We lost so many jobs over the years. If you go back 20, 25 years, they've stolen, going to China and Mexico, about 68% of our auto industry manufacturing jobs. We're going to get them all back. We're going to get them all back, every one of them. At the center of our plan for economic relief are massive tax cuts for workers that include something else that's turned out to be very popular, actually. Here it's very popular, in this building and all those hotels that I saw that are so nice. I'm staying in a nice one. It's called no tax on tips. No tax on tips. No tax on tips. I got that by having dinner recently in Nevada, where we're leading by about 14 points. Hello. I'll see you there very soon, everybody. And we're having dinner at a beautiful restaurant in the Trump building on the Strip, and it's a great building, and the waitress comes over. How's everything going? A really nice person. How's everything? Oh, sir, it's so tough. The government's after me all the time on tips, tips, tips. I said, well, they give you cash. Would they be able to find him? She said, actually, and I didn't know this, she said, very little cash is given. It's all put right on the check. And they come in and they take so much of our money, it's just ridiculous, and they don't believe anything we say. And they've just hired, as you know, 88,000 agents to go after them even more. And I said, this shows the level of my, most people go out, they hire consultants, they pay them millions of dollars. But I said to her, let me just ask you a question. Would you be happy if you had no tax on tips? She said, what a great idea. I got my information from a very smart waitress. That's better than spending millions of dollars. And everybody loves it. Waitresses and caddies and drivers and everybody's a large group of people that are being really hurt badly. They make money, let them keep their money. I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicare. Democrats are going to destroy Social Security and Medicare because all of these people, by the millions they're coming in, they're going to be on Social Security and Medicare and other things, and you're not able to afford it. They are destroying your Social Security and your Medicare. Under my plan, incomes will skyrocket, inflation will vanish completely, jobs will come roaring back, and the middle class will prosper like never, ever before, and we're going to do it very rapidly. But no hope or dream we have for America can succeed unless we stop the illegal immigrant invasion, the worst that's ever been seen anywhere in the world. There's never been an invasion like this anywhere. Third world countries would fight with sticks and stones not to let this happen. The invasion at our southern border, we will stop it, and we will stop it quickly. You heard Tom Homan yesterday. Tom Homan, put him in charge and just sit back and watch. Brandon Judd of Border Patrol, he's incredible. These guys, they really, their job is a lot easier if they don't have to do anything, but they want to. They're patriots. Brandon Judd, Border Patrol, ICE. ICE goes out. You have to see what ICE does with MS-13. You have these are probably the worst gang, and ICE goes in there. And I know a lot of people in these rows here, and they're very tough people, but they don't want to do this job. They'll go into a pack of MS-13 killers. They're the worst, probably the worst gangs in the world. We have thousands of them. I moved thousands and thousands out in my 4 years. We moved them out, and it was a pleasure. But ICE would go right into a pack of these killers, and you see fists flying, you see everything flying, and then they take them. They put them in a paddy wagon. They take them back, and they get them out of our country. And the other countries weren't accepting them back, and I called up, and I said, tell them that we're not giving them economic aid anymore. And the next day, I got calls from all of these countries that were terminated. Billions of dollars we spend on economic aid to countries that does us, frankly, no good. And the next day I was called by everybody. I couldn't take all the calls. Sir, what's the problem? I said, you won't take your killers back that you sent in caravans into America. You won't take them back. Well, sir, if you'd like us to, we would give very serious consideration to doing that. And within 24 hours, they were being taken back. For years and years, when I first came in, they said President Obama tried to get him to go back, and they wouldn't accept him. They'd put planes on the runway so you couldn't leave the plane. They'd close the road so you couldn't take the buses. They'd all have to turn back. As soon as I said no more economic aid of any kind to any country that does that, they called back and they said, sir, it would be our great honor to take MS-13. We love them very much. We love them very much, sir. We'll take them back. At the heart of the Republican platform is our pledge to end this border nightmare and fully restore the sacred and sovereign borders of the United States of America, and we're going to do that on day one. That means two things on day one, right? Drill, baby, drill, and close our borders. And by the way, and I think everybody as a Republican, as a patriot in this room, and most Democrats, we want people to come into our country, but they have to come into our country legally. Legally. Less than 4 years ago, I handed this administration the strongest border in American history. But you can see on the chart that saved my life, that was the chart that saved my life. I said, look it, I'm so proud of it. I think it's one of the greatest, it was done by the Border Patrol, one of the greatest charts I've ever seen. It showed everything just like that. You know the chart. Oh, there it is. That's pretty good. Wow. Last time I put up that chart, I never really got to look at it. But without that chart, I would not be here today. Never got to look at it. I said, you got to see this chart. I was so proud of it, and by the time I got to there, I never got to see it that day. But I'm seeing it now, and I was very proud. If you look at the arrow on the bottom, that's the lowest level, the one on the bottom, heavy red arrow. That's the lowest level of illegal immigrants ever to come into our country in recorded history, right there. Right there. And that was my last week in office. And then you see what happened after I left. Look at the rest. And if you go out a little bit further, it's getting to be a little bit old, but I love it anyway, right? But you can go much higher with those numbers. Look what happened right after that. The invasion began. We had the opposite. We stopped the invasion. But the invasion that we stopped was peanuts by comparison to what happened after I left. Look at what happened after I left. They took over our country. We ended all catch and release. We shut down asylum fraud. We stopped human trafficking and forged historic agreements to keep illegal aliens on foreign soil. We want them to stay on their soil. Under the Trump administration, if you came in illegally, you were apprehended immediately and you were deported. You went right back. The current administration terminated every single one of those great Trump policies that I put in place to seal the border. I wanted a sealed border. Again, come in, but come in legally. You know how unfair it is? So many people, hundreds of thousands of people, have been working for years to come into our country. And now they see these people pour into our country at levels that are unprecedented. It's so unfair. And we're not going to do it. We're not going to stand for it. They suspended wall construction, ended remain in Mexico. We had a policy, remain in Mexico. You think that was easy to get from the Mexican government? But I said, you must give it to us. If you don't give it to us, there will be repercussions. And they gave it to us. But not easy. Canceled our Safe Third agreements. demolished Title 42, implemented nationwide catch and release. That's catch and release, where we catch them and release them into our country. We catch them and release them into Mexico. There's a slight difference. And took 93, this is the previous administration, 93 executive actions to throw open our border to the world. The entire world is pouring into our country because of this very foolish administration. The greatest invasion in history is taking place right here in our country. They are coming in from every corner of the earth, not just from South America, but from Africa, Asia, the Middle East. They're coming from everywhere. They're coming at levels that we've never seen before. It is an invasion indeed, and this administration does absolutely nothing to stop them. They're coming from prisons. They're coming from jails. They're coming from mental institutions and insane asylums. The press is always on me because I say this. Has anyone seen Silence of the Lambs? The late, great Hannibal Lecter. He'd love to have you for dinner. That's insane asylums. They're emptying out their insane asylums. And terrorists are coming in at numbers that we've never seen before. Bad things are going to happen. Meanwhile, our crime rate is going up, while crime statistics all over the world are going down, because they're taking their criminals and they're putting them into our country. A certain country, and I happen to like the president of that country very much, but he's been getting great publicity because he's a wonderful shepherd of the country. He says how well the country's doing because their crime rate is down. And he said he's training all of these rough people. They're rough. He's training them. And I've been reading about this for 2 years. I think, oh, that's wonderful. Let's take a look at it. But then I realized he's not training them. He's sending all of his criminals, his drug dealers, his people that are in jails, he's sending them all to the United States. And he's different in that he doesn't say that. He's trying to convince everybody what a wonderful job he does in running the country. Well, he doesn't do a wonderful job. And by the way, if I ran one of the countries, many countries from all over, I would be worse than any of them. I would have had the place totally emptied out already. But we become a dumping ground for the rest of the world, which is laughing at us. They think we're stupid. And they can't believe that they're getting away with what they're getting away with, but they're not going to be getting away with it for long. That's what I can tell you. In Venezuela, Caracas, high crime. Caracas, Venezuela. Really a dangerous place, but not anymore. Because in Venezuela, crime is down 72%. In fact, if they would ever win this election, I hate to even say that, we will have our next Republican convention in Venezuela because it will be safe. Our cities will be so unsafe, we will not be able to have it there. In El Salvador, murders are down by 70%. Why are they down? Now, he would have you convinced that because he's trained murderers to be wonderful people. No. They're down because they're sending their murderers to the United States of America. This is going to be very bad. And bad things are going to happen, and you're seeing it happen all the time. That's why, to keep our families safe, the Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country. Even larger than that of President Dwight D. Eisenhower from many years ago. You know, he was a moderate, but he believed very strongly in borders. He had the largest deportation operation we've ever had. Just recently, I spoke to the grieving mother of Jocelyn Nungary, a wonderful woman, a precious 12-year-old girl from Houston who last month was tied up, assaulted, and strangled to death after walking to the convenience store just a block away from her house. Her body was dumped near the side of the road in a shallow creek, found by some onlookers who couldn't believe what they had witnessed. charged with Jocelyn's heinous murder are 2 illegal aliens from Venezuela who came across our border, were in custody, and were then released into the country by this horrible, horrible administration that we have right now. I also met recently with the heartbroken mother and sister of Rachel Morin. Rachel was a 37-year-old mom of 5 beautiful children who was brutally raped and murdered while out on a run. She wanted to keep herself in good shape. It was very important to her. She was murdered. The monster responsible first killed another woman in El Salvador before he was led into America by the White House. This White House let them in. He then attacked a 9-year-old girl and her mother in a home invasion in Los Angeles before murdering Rachel in Maryland. Traveled all throughout the country, doing tremendous damage. Rachel's mother will never be the same. I spent time with her. She will never be the same. I've also met with the wonderful family of Laken Riley, the brilliant 22-year-old nursing student. She was so proud of being first in her class, who was out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia when she was assaulted, beaten, and horrifically killed. Yet another American life was stolen by a criminal alien set free by this administration. And these were incredible people we're talking about. These were incredible people who died. Tonight, America, this is my vow. I will not let these killers and criminals into our country. I will keep our sons and daughters safe. As we bring security to our streets, we will help bring stability to the world. I was the first president in modern times to start no new wars. You know, we were the toughest, we were the most respected. And you saw this. Hungry, strong country, run by very powerful, tough leaders. Tough guy. Press doesn't like him because he's tough. And he came out recently. They were asking him at an interview, the whole world is exploding. What's happening? What's going on? Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, very tough man. He said, I don't want people coming into my country and blowing up our shopping centers and killing people. But they said to him, tell us what's going wrong, what's happening, what is it? He said, there's only one way you're going to solve it. You got to bring President Trump back to the United States because he kept everybody at bay. He used a word I wouldn't use because I can't use that word. Because you'd say it was braggadocious. The press would say he was a braggart. I'm not a braggart. But Viktor Orban said it. He said Russia was afraid of him. China was afraid of him. Everybody was afraid of him. Nothing was going to happen. The whole world was at peace. And now the world is blowing up around us. All of these things that you read about were not going to happen. Under President Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under President Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under the current administration, Russia is after all of Ukraine. Under President Trump, Russia took nothing. We defeated 100% of ISIS in Syria and Iraq, something that was said to take 5 years, sir. It'll take 5 years, sir. We did it in a matter of a couple of months. We have a great military. Our military is not woke. It's just some of the fools on top that are woke. I got along very well. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I got along very well with him. The press hated when I said that. How could you get along with him? Well, you know, it's nice to get along with somebody who has a lot of nuclear weapons or otherwise, isn't it? See, in the old days, they'd say, that's a wonderful thing. Now they say, how can you possibly do that? But no, I got along with them, and we stopped the missile launches from North Korea. Now North Korea is acting up again, but When we get back, I get along with him. He'd like to see me back, too. I think he misses me, if you want to know the truth. Our opponents inherited a world at peace and turned it into a planet of war. We're in a planet of war. Look at that attack on Israel. Look at what's happening with Ukraine. The cities are just bombed out. How can people live like that where buildings, massive buildings, are falling to the ground? It began to unravel with the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the worst humiliation in the history of our country. We have never had a humiliation like that. 13 heroic U.S. service members were tragically and needlessly killed. 45 others were horrifically wounded. Nobody ever talks about them. No arms, no legs, face explosions, horrifically wounded. And by the way, we have a man in this room who's running for the U.S. Senate from a great state, Nevada, named Sam Brown, who paid the ultimate price. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. He paid the biggest price probably ever paid by anybody that is running for office, and I think he's going to do great. He's running against a person that is not good, not respected, a total lightweight. But Sam, I think, paid, really, we were talking about it with some of the senators that are working so hard for Sam, but he paid the biggest price of any senator ever to run for the Senate. I don't think anybody's ever what he did. He was a real hero, a really great person. And he's running, and I hope that everybody gets out and votes for Sam Brown. And we also left behind $85 billion worth of military equipment, along with many American citizens were left behind. Many, many American citizens, emboldened by that disaster. Russia invaded Ukraine. They saw this group of people that were incompetent. We took the soldiers out first. No, we're going to take the soldiers out second. If they would have followed my plan, we had a great plan. But the plan only kicked in if they did everything perfectly, and they weren't doing things perfectly, so we said it doesn't kick in. You know, 18 months in Afghanistan, we didn't have one, so they were killing them left and right, snipers. And I spoke to the head of the Taliban. You've heard this story. Abdul, still there, still the head of the Taliban. The press got on me, why would you speak to him? I said, because that's where the killing is. I don't have to speak to somebody that has nothing to do with it. And I told him, don't ever do that. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever do that again. You've got to stop. Because during the Obama administration, many great people and soldiers, but a lot of soldiers were being killed from long distance. I said, if you keep doing that, you're going to be hit harder than anybody's ever been hit by a country before. And he said, I understand, Your Excellency. He called me Your Excellency. I wonder if he calls the other guy Your Excellency. I doubt it. The other guy gave him everything. I mean, what kind of a deal was that? He walked out, gave him everything. Do you know that right now Afghanistan is one of the largest sellers of weapons in the world? They're selling the brand new, beautiful weapons that we gave them. But think of it, he actually said to me, but why do you show me a picture of my home? I said, you'll have to ask your people or one of your wives. But he could figure it out. And for 18 months, we had not one attack on an American soldier by the Taliban. 18 months. And then we had that horrible day where soldiers were killed. I was not there because of a ridiculous election. But we had that horrible attack. And they also gave up Bagram, one of the biggest bases anywhere in the world, air bases anywhere in the world, the longest runways, most powerful, hardened, thickened runways. We gave it up. And I liked it, not because of Afghanistan. I liked it because of China. It's 1 hour away from where China makes their nuclear weapons. And you know who has it now? China has it now. We were keeping that. And now China is likewise circling Taiwan, and Russian warships and nuclear submarines are operating 60 miles off the coast in Cuba. Do you know that? No, the press refuses to write about it. If that were me running this country and we had nuclear submarines in Cuba, I will tell you that the headlines every day would be, what's wrong with our president? You don't even hear this. You're not hearing about this. Russia has nuclear submarines and warships 60 miles away, Mr. Congressman, from Miami, by the way, happens to be here. Correct? In Cuba. And that would not be stood for if it were somebody else. They don't want to mention it, but now maybe they will. And the entire world, I tell you this, we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price. With our victory in November, the years of war, weakness, and chaos will be over. I don't have wars. I had no wars other than ISIS, which I defeated, but that was a war that was started. We had no wars. I could stop wars with a telephone call. I could stop wars with just a telephone call. If properly stated, it would never start. We will replenish our military and build an Iron Dome missile defense system to ensure that no enemy can strike our homeland. And this great Iron Dome will be built entirely in the USA. We're going to build it in the USA. And Wisconsin, just like I gave you that massive ship contract, and you're doing a very nice job, Governor, right? Thank you, Governor. And they're doing a great job. In fact, I had a little design change, and we gave them a tremendous for essentially what we used to call destroyers. These are now the most beautiful. They look like yachts. I said, we have to take the bow, and we have to make it a little nicer and a little point at the top instead of a flat nose. And the people at the shipyard said, this guy sort of knows what he's doing. We have the most beautiful ships, right, Governor? And everybody's sitting over there. And it was a big contract that everybody wanted. I gave it to Wisconsin, but we're going to have a lot of that built right here in the state of Wisconsin and all other states. Israel has an Iron Dome. They have a missile defense system. 342 missiles were shot into Israel, and only one got through a little bit. It was badly wounded. It fell to the ground, but most of them are. And Ronald Reagan wanted this many years ago, but we really didn't have the technology many years ago. Remember, they called it Starship, spaceship, anything to mock him. But he was a very good president, very, very good. But now we have unbelievable technology. And why should other countries have this and we don't? No, we're going to build an Iron Dome over our country, and we're going to be sure that nothing can come and harm our people. And again, from an economic development standpoint, we're going to make it all right here. No more sending it out to other countries in order to help. It's America first. America first. We will unleash the power of American innovation. And as we do, we will soon be on the verge of finding the cures to cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and many other diseases. We're going to get to the bottom of it. You remember this gentleman that I don't want to mention other than one time I had to, because when you say the 10 worst, I had to do it. I didn't want anybody to be confused. But this man said, we're going to find a cure to cancer. Nothing happened. We're going to get to the cure for cancer and Alzheimer's and so many other things. We're so close to doing something great. But we need a leader that will let it be done. We will not have men playing in women's sports. That will end immediately. And we will restore and renovate our nation's once great cities, making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. And that includes our nation's capital, which is a horrible killing field. So many things. They leave from Wisconsin, they go to look at the Washington Monument, they end up getting stabbed, killed, or shot. We will be very soon very proud of our capital, again, Washington, D.C. America is on the cusp of a new golden age, but we will have the courage to seize it. We're going to take it. We're going to make it a current. We're going to bring this into a golden age like never seen before. Remember this, China wants to do it. Japan wants to do it. All of these countries want to do it. We have to produce massive amounts of energy if we're going to produce the new. If you look at some of the things that have been done, and some of the things that we're going to do. But AI needs literally twice the electricity that's available now in our country. Can you imagine? But instead, we're spending places where they recharge electric cars. They built 8 chargers at a certain location toward the Midwest. 8 chargers for $9 billion. Think of them as a tank for filling up your gas. Think of it. They spent $9 billion on 8 chargers, 3 of which didn't work. And if you were going to do this all over our country, this crazy electric mandate, if you're going to do this all, and by the way, I'm all for electric. They have their application. But if somebody wants to buy a gas-powered car, gasoline-powered car, or a hybrid, they're going to be able to do it. And we're going to make that change on day 1. So to conclude, just a few short days ago, my journey with you nearly ended. We know that. And yet, here we are tonight, all gathered together, talking about the future, promise, and a total renewal of a thing we love very much. It's called America. We live in a world of miracles. None of us knows God's plan or where life's adventure will take us. I want to thank Franklin Graham for being here tonight. He's an outstanding man. He wrote me a note recently. I have a lot of respect for him. Sir, I love your storytelling. I think it's great in front of these big rallies. But, sir, please do me one favor. It won't make any difference. Please don't use any foul language. I was a little embarrassed. I said, he said, it won't make any difference. Actually, it does. The story's not quite as good, but I've been very good. The story is not quite as good, to be honest. I've got to have a little talk with Franklin, but he was great. He's a great gentleman. His father was so incredible, Billy Graham. My father used to love taking me to see Billy Graham. My father would take me to see Billy Graham at Yankee Stadium. He had the biggest rallies you've ever seen. He was a good rally guy, too. But he'd get up, and he was a fantastic guy. My father loved Billy Graham. But I love Franklin Graham. I think Franklin's been fantastic, and I'm working so hard to adhere to his note to me. I'm working hard on it, Franklin. But if the events of last Saturday make anything clear, it is that every single moment we have on earth is a gift from God. We have to make the most of every day for the people and for the country that we love. The attacker in Pennsylvania wanted to stop our movement, but the truth is the movement has never been about me. It has always been about you. It's your movement. It's the biggest movement in the history of our country by far. Can't be stopped. It can't be stopped. It has always been about the hardworking, patriotic citizens of America. For too long, our nation has settled for too little. We settled for too little. We've given everything to other nations, to other people. You've been told to lower your expectations and to accept less for your families. I am here tonight with the opposite message. Your expectations are not big enough. They're not big enough. It is time to start expecting and demanding the best leadership in the world, leadership that is bold, dynamic, relentless, and fearless. We can do that. We are Americans. Ambition is our heritage. Greatness is our birthright. But as long as our energies are spent fighting each other, our destiny will remain out of reach, and that's not acceptable. We must instead take that energy and use it to realize our country's true potential and write our own thrilling chapter of the American story. We can do it together. We will unite. We are going to come together, and success will bring us together.
Well, in case you didn't realize that, that was Donald Trump, his first speech since that assassination attempt on Saturday night. This has been a convention soaked in swagger, but this speech began differently. It was two speeches, really. The first part, a bit subdued. Curiously, we counted. His written speech had the word love in it as many times as he used the word fight. I'm not supposed to be here, he said. Nothing short of an act of God saved him, he said. He offered a pretty detailed account of what happened on Saturday in that assassination attempt. He said he'll never talk about it a second time. I knew it was very serious. We were under attack, not him, we, his supporters. And then after he offered that account, out came the Donald Trump of MAGA, the boastful Trump of wild claims that the war in Ukraine would not have happened if he'd been president, the attack on Israel would not have happened, that bad things are happening now and will continue to happen if he is not elected, saying, just as an example, quote, that 107% of jobs are taken by illegal aliens. Odd numbers, so lots of fact-checking to come. He promises the largest deportation operation in the history of the country. Interestingly, one mention of Joe Biden by name, then he said he wasn't going to use the name anymore, as if it was a strategic decision, as if he has erased Biden from the equation. Is he gone from the equation? Well, this is the culmination of a Republican convention. You're looking at the balloon drop right now, that iconic moment in every convention, but it is not the story, the whole story of the United States. That is a country and political landscape that is changing as we speak and has changed in just the last week. And the news is not stopping. So let's take a moment and talk about the meaning of this moment. So let's go to Milwaukee. Let's go to Paul Hunter, who's at that convention. Paul?
I got to say, Adrienne, for that first part of the speech, or number one of the two speeches, as you described them, I was thinking, who is this guy? He's talking about a victory meaning for all of America, and that it wouldn't be a victory if it's just half of America, the kind of thing we haven't really heard Donald Trump speak about so much ever. And then he described in great detail what happened with that attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. And I'm telling you, this place was silent. I've never known silence in a room where Donald Trump was speaking. It was kind of incredible. And again, I'm thinking, what is going on here? And then came the rest of it, and it was the Donald Trump we know, the extemporaneous, off-script, kind of rambling anecdotes and this, that, and the other, then coming back to the points that he was making tonight, which are the kinds of points that he's been making throughout his time in politics. You know, we've been talking so much about tone. Well, the tone was different off the top. And then it went back to the tone of Donald Trump, full of, you know, half-truths, false statements, overstated bits of stuff meant to be fact and not really. And the kind of things that many people who support Donald Trump believe because he says them. This was kind of a kind of partly subdued version of a Donald Trump rally. But it's as if he couldn't help himself, you know. We all presumed and thought and were led to believe that he had been told to be different, to be disciplined, to not go down too many of those rabbit holes. But it seems that he did. And for all those undecided voters we were talking about, for whom this speech was really aimed at, I'm not sure that it's clear that they would see anything here to bring him to his side at this point. This is you know, it feels like we've been in a campaign for some time, and Democrats have their own problems right now, but things are just beginning, and it began, it seems to me, with effectively a version of the Donald Trump that we've known all this time, except for that first part. But then he became the Donald Trump that we know.
Indeed. So, Paul, tell you what we're going to do. We're going to break down the meaning of all of that in the breakdown. But for people who are just joining us and wondering what exactly did he say, let's bring in Katie Simpson to walk us through some of the very moments that Paul was just talking about. Katie?
One thing that Paul mentioned that really stood out to me as well was the silence in this arena when Donald Trump was explaining his firsthand account of what happened on that stage in Pennsylvania on Saturday. You would hear the odd shout of praise God from people scattered throughout the audience. But when Donald Trump went step by step about what happened to him on Saturday, describing being struck in the ear by a bullet, by diving onto the ground, falling to the ground, the Secret Service trying to protect him. And then the moment that has become his iconic rallying cry now, the moment where he stood up and vowed to continue fighting.
The crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over. But I could see it, and I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you.
You can see it in the audience in that clip there with people screaming, chanting, pumping their fist in the air just like Donald Trump did. That is now the rallying cry of the MAGA movement and really is what the energy that this crowd is going to be taking out into the real world as this election campaign moves forward. But Adrienne, as you mentioned, and as Paul mentioned as well, that was one aspect of this speech. This was one part of Donald Trump. The Donald Trump that airs his grievances, that's angry and polarizing. He did make an appearance. He was more subdued than normal. But you need to look no further than his language on immigration. Really, that was some of his toughest rhetoric, divisive rhetoric. And so those elements that we do typically see at a Trump event, at a Trump rally, it was still in there.
So, Katie, I'm just thinking about what you said about what he said about immigration and the tone of that. It was very hard to keep up, right, with the claims he was making. The fact-checking to come is going to be intense, but it strikes me that I'm not entirely clear that the fact-checking will make a difference because the tone seemed to speak to precisely what people wanted to hear, regardless of the veracity of it.
No, and this is what you typically see, though, at a Trump event. He makes bold generalizations, often indulging in mistruths and or misinformation. And then we even heard some claims around election fraud. He poked at it a couple of times to try and make a point that he still believes, or at least he still says, the 2020 election was stolen from him, even though the 2020 election was a free and fair election. That is not true. And we've heard that from his surrogates as well. But Donald Trump really leaned into the Donald Trump that we know and that we recognize when he spoke about immigration using some of the harsh language that he typically does. We do have a clip from that where he talks about illegal immigration into the United States.
We also have an illegal immigration crisis, and it's taking place right now as we sit here in this beautiful arena. It's a massive invasion at our southern border that has spread misery, crime, poverty, disease, and destruction to communities all across our land. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
That is the kind of language that critics say, demonizes migrants in America and really is the source of a lot of criticism in the United States, described as racially charged. Some of his critics call it racist as well. Donald Trump also pointed a finger back at Democrats. He only said Joe Biden's name once, but he did point a finger at Democrats saying, listen, you guys want unity? and he made the allegation that Democrats can create unity if they stop and they drop all of the criminal cases against him. Donald Trump has not presented any evidence to prove that there has been a weaponization of the justice system, but he still stands on the stage and accuses his opponents of trying to hurt him politically using the justice system.
We must not criminalize dissent or demonize political disagreement, which is what's been happening in our country lately at a level that nobody has ever seen before. In that spirit, the Democrat Party should immediately stop weaponizing the justice system and labeling their political opponent as an enemy of democracy. Especially since that is not true. In fact, I am the one saving democracy for the people of our country.
So that's the Donald Trump that we typically see, in contrast with the Donald Trump who walked out on that stage and told his story of survival from Pennsylvania.
Katie Simpson, thank you for that wrap-up. Katie Simpson in Milwaukee. So boy, there is a lot to go through here. Will Donald Trump's message resonate with Americans? I'll have that conversation a little later in the program. But now let's turn to his opponent, Joe Biden. In a stark contrast to the Republican show of solidarity, Democrats appear divided over their leader, with reports now that Barack Obama is among those advising Joe Biden to bow out. And as Sasha Petrusik explains, Biden seems powerless to stop it.
The first woman vice president.
With Joe Biden down with COVID,
Kamala Harris.
it was up to Vice President Kamala Harris to carry the Democratic campaign for the White House.
You cannot claim you stand for unity if you are pushing an agenda that deprives whole groups of Americans of basic freedoms, opportunity, and dignity.
Going after Republicans with a vigor some say President Joe Biden is missing.
But I think that's where you see someone like Vice President Harris really taking it to Donald Trump.
The timing of Biden's COVID isolation couldn't be worse for Democrats as questions mount about whether the 81-year-old should step aside.
The millionaires pay 1%.
Beginning after a weak debate performance, snowballing as big donors and members of Congress went public.
Again, it's his decision because he has the delegates and the pledged delegates. But frankly, I think there's real concern.
But it's the reports now of growing private concerns deepening Biden's crisis. Of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and now former President Barack Obama, all reportedly warning Biden he's likely to lose and bring his party down with him.
Today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
At their convention, seen by jubilant Republicans as weakness.
They know they're fixing to get their teeth kicked in.
Experts say public polls have not reflected a disastrous drop-off in support.
And so I do believe that the race hasn't changed as much as perhaps we would want to think it has.
And publicly, at least, aides say Biden remains steadfast. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
So we have much more on Trump's speech ahead, because as jubilant as people in that arena in Milwaukee are, the speech wasn't really for them. It's for that group of undecideds in the United States who aren't sure where to put their vote. We'll talk about this with our panel straight ahead. We're back at 2. A wildfire evacuation order is expanding in BC's southern interior tonight after two smaller fires merged into one large blaze.
I'm about 200-300 meters away and I already feel the heat.
So what you're looking at is near Spence's Bridge, that's west of Kamloops. This witness aptly describing the scene as Armageddon. 85 properties are being told to leave right now, as well as several First Nations. Currently, more than 230 fires are burning across the province. Officials warn the next 3 days will be very challenging. Well, that major listeria outbreak is being blamed for at least 2 deaths in Ontario following a Canada-wide recall of some plant-based beverages. Megan Fitzpatrick now with the new warnings and why food-based infections are so dangerous.
The shelves sit empty as the scope of a listeria outbreak becomes clearer.
We want to be sure that everything was swiftly removed so people can rely on the product that we have on our shelves.
This after a nationwide recall of Silk and Great Value almond, oat, and coconut beverages, suspected of containing the bacteria. Now, the Public Health Agency of Canada is reporting 2 deaths linked to the outbreak. There are 12 confirmed cases of listeriosis, 10 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, 1 in Nova Scotia. But the concern is cases could soon rise.
It can be quite some time between eating or drinking the contaminated material and actually getting sick.
Some people get mild symptoms of fever, nausea, and vomiting and may never know they were infected.
There are ways to treat it, but the problem is, of course, that oftentimes you don't suspect it until it's further advanced.
Listeriosis can be fatal, and people who are pregnant or elderly are at greater risk of severe illness. The company that makes the recalled products says it's working with authorities to investigate the cause of contamination. Danone Canada calls news of the deaths devastating and said their sincere sympathies go out to the families and loved ones during this difficult time.
This is a pretty major outbreak, and I think a lot of people are surprised that it's coming from what people would consider sort of a health type of food.
In 2008, 22 people died from a listeria outbreak linked to contaminated meat made by Maple Leaf Foods. That outbreak prompted some changes to food safety, but experts say more progress is needed.
Can we get better point of production testing so that these things don't happen?
As investigators search for the cause of this outbreak, the advice is do not consume any of the recalled products and throw them out immediately or return them to the store. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
Labour Minister and Newfoundland and Labrador MP Seamus O'Regan is resigning from cabinet citing family reasons.
It's just one of those things, you know it when the time comes.
A former TV journalist, O'Regan was first elected alongside the Trudeau government in 2015 and joined cabinet in 2017. He held several portfolios in the years since. O'Regan says he will stay on as MP but will not seek re-election. Sources have told CBC News his replacement as Labour Minister will be Steve McKinnon, currently Leader of the government in the House. Well, Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight for delivering decades of punchlines like few others.
What is this?
Be careful with that.
We look back at the sitcom star and his remarkable legacy next. Bob Newhart is being remembered tonight as one of the most popular TV stars of his time. His publicist confirmed today the comedian died after a series of short illnesses at the age of 94. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson now with Newhart's legacy of laughter.
We've got a perfect marriage.
Emily, a perfect marriage is where the husband and the wife have the same IQ.
If Bob Newhart became famous for playing a regular, straight-laced guy in a world of eccentrics, he came by it honestly.
Feels so good, I'm going to take the afternoon off.
Known for his stammering signature deadpan delivery, Newhart was a fixture on TV for decades. But he actually started far from the spotlight as an accountant before releasing a comedy album that made people take notice. It also opened doors for his long-running, beloved sitcoms. In the 1970s Bob Newhart show, he played a psychologist. In 1980s Newhart, he was an innkeeper. Different characters with the same core.
You don't hit on a style. I mean, you don't look at the other comedians that are working and say, oh, look, nobody's doing deadpan, so I'll do that. It was just my natural way of working.
A type of character that would inspire comics for generations, including Canada's Brent Butt, creator of Corner Gas, who tells us he made everything seem so real. On his shows, he was this grounding force amid the swirling nuttiness that made it somehow more legitimate than other sitcoms.
Bob Newhart!
But it wasn't until 2013 that Newhart's genius finally won him the award that long eluded him, a Primetime Emmy, when he appeared on The Big Bang Theory.
I thought you were dead.
I am. Oh, it's fantastic.
Even in his late 70s, he got big laughs from CBC audiences.
Appearing tonight is Bob Newhart. No, he's the comedian. So.
Proving that even in the often outrageous world of comedy, the boldest, most lasting act is being true to yourself. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
It's time now to take a closer look at the news shaping our world, and tonight it is all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump officially takes his place atop the Republican presidential ticket.
So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
The party believes the White House is within its grasp once again, its leader vowing to unify the country.
Look what happened.
After a shocking attempt on his life. So what does that look like, and will he deliver? To help guide us through this pivotal moment, we have our panel back again tonight, Brian Stelter, Tia Mitchell, and Richard Madden. So thank you for being here. Whew, Tia, you were in the room. How do people react to the speech?
Well, I think the crowd was very enthusiastic throughout the speech. When he got to certain points, they cheered with him, the drill, baby drill chant and the fight chants. But like with his normal rally speeches, as he gets past that 1 hour mark, people's attention starts to wane a little bit. And we saw that here tonight.
Oh, certainly. I mean, it's now the longest, I think, nominee acceptance speech in the history of the United States, over like an hour and a half long. It started, Tia, with this very different tone from what people are used to from Donald Trump. First time, we heard from him since someone tried to kill him. Why don't we listen to how he described that attack?
I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together.
Tia, I'm curious what you made of his tone there, because looking at it from afar, it seems super quiet in the arena, but the whole speech, somber at the beginning, but still vintage Trump at the end.
Yeah, that's very true. By the end, it was like any other rally speech he's delivered in recent months. But at the beginning, he was somber. He did kind of tell this dramatic retelling of what happened on Saturday. But I think it's interesting in that he focused on kind of giving people a play-by-play of his experience, and he ended by saying, "I'm not supposed to be here." You know, that's definitely something that can evoke emotion. But he didn't really talk about his personal emotions, any personal reflections that he has after, you know, going through a threat on his life. And it just shows that sometimes the emotional connection isn't there for Donald Trump. It's still about kind of the theatrics and trying to pull on the emotions, but not really sharing emotions. That's something that really struck me with how he even retold the story from Saturday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brian, we heard, I think, immediately after the shooting happened, we heard a lot about unity from both Biden and Trump. And again, Donald Trump striking initially this unusual bipartisan tone. And if people didn't hear it the first time, here it is now.
I'm here tonight to lay out a vision for the whole nation. To every citizen, whether you're a young or old man or woman, Democrat, Republican, or independent, black or white, Asian or Hispanic, I extend to you a hand of loyalty and of friendship. Together we will lead America to new heights of greatness like the world has never seen before.
Brian, is that a play for disillusioned Biden voters, and will it work?
To some degree, it is a play for that broader audience, but it's an example of Trump trying to have it both ways. I think he did everyone a favor by reverting to his rally talking points because he reinforced the stakes of this election. Democrats, after having 3 terrible weeks stressed out about Joe Biden, had a pretty good night. As they were watching this speech, they felt better about their chances, although many Democrats still believe it'd be better to replace Biden with a different candidate. But this speech reminds everyone that Donald Trump is almost 80 years old. He has been repeating the same lines and lies for many years. He has been cast by Democrats as a loser, a cheater, a felon, and a liar. Tonight's message from Trump was, I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior for you. And I'm the victim of attacks, including one very, very real criminal attack. The message was all over the place, though. And he's trying to have it both ways by talking unity in one minute, but also talking about the terrible state of the world or America the next minute.
I was scribbling down a lot of notes about how terrible things are right now and how they will only get better if he's there. There is a consistency that's kind of interesting. I gather, and Tia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a mural somewhere at the convention that says, "They're not coming for me, they're coming for you. I'm just standing in the way."
Yeah.
I think, he talked tonight as well about, he didn't say I was under attack, they were shooting at us. Again, a nod to that.
Yeah, that's a big theme. Again, that's something we've heard from him for months on the campaign trail. And I think, again, among his base, it's really resonated. They do believe that the fight for Trump is a fight bigger than just electing him president. It's about a way of life. It's about, for people who think and, quite frankly, look like them. Brian said earlier, this is a very white male-focused convention.
Yes.
For them, a lot of what Trump preaches is that it's preserving their way of life. He's fighting for them. But again, yes, he's tried to create this unifying, more universal message. But when you listen to what he says, because there was a lot of policy that he shared today, he's really got one certain type of American in mind that he's hoping to benefit. And there are other types of Americans that might not feel so seen in the direction that Trump wants to take the country.
Yeah, no doubt. I think there were people in foreign capitals as well who were taking notes and maybe nervous. Richard, there was a noted sort of standing ovation in Milwaukee. He talked about J.D. Vance, he talked about his stance on Ukraine, and then he vowed that not only would the war not have happened had he been there, but it will certainly end if he's in charge. Can we have a listen to that clip?
I was the first president in modern times to start no new wars. We were the toughest, we were the most respectful. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, very tough man. He said, I don't want people coming into my country and blowing up our shopping centers and killing people. But they said to him, tell us what's going wrong, what's happening, what is it? He said, there's only one way you're going to solve it. You got to bring President Trump back.
Okay, so how interesting is that, Richard? Applause in Milwaukee for Viktor Orban, you know, a strong man who recently met with Putin. Richard, if you're Justin Trudeau in Ottawa, or if you're Vladimir Zelensky in Kyiv, who, as CNN reports, has a call with Trump tomorrow, what is the international community taking away from that?
Yeah, that was red meat to the base. Obviously, Viktor Orban is a celebrity of the hard right. This obviously is going to make some moderate wing of the Republicans nervous if they still exist. Orban is accused of abusing his power and stripping pillars of democracy, slowly ushering in a form of authoritarian rule in Hungary. He's also a harsh critic of the EU support for Ukraine. So clearly this has got to raise a couple alarm bells among the NATO alliance, because both Trump and Orban have a few things in common. They both brag about their cozy friendships with Russia President Putin and their lukewarm support of NATO. So while the Western alliance might be concerned, this is a good sign if you're the Kremlin. That's already praised Trump's pick for his running mate, J.D. Vance, who is one of the strongest voices in the Senate to block U.S. aid to Ukraine. So for Trump to throw out his friendship with Viktor Orban is, as I mentioned off the top, it's red meat to the base. But if you are a moderate and you're trying to broaden your tent, you're wanting Trump to broaden the tent, this would be kind of a worrying person to raise as one of your pals in that speech.
For people at home, just so you know, when a speech like this is coming out, there is often an embargoed copy that you get, that so you can check what the speech that's actually delivered against the notes. And it wasn't long before you might as well have tossed that out, because Donald Trump just went into, unscripted moments. And here's an example of one of those.
107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens. And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population, because they're taking the jobs from our black population, our Hispanic population, and they're also taking them from unions.
Brian, focused a lot on illegal immigration, offered a lot of numbers that don't seem known to nature. I'm wondering what's at play here, and if you could talk about not only that, but why the ad lib? Why not stick with the speech?
Yeah, the fact checks are underway now, and they're going to take a long time because there was a lot that was gibberish in this speech. Trump described a dystopian America, reminiscent of his phrase American carnage from his inauguration day. He said the country is being invaded by terrorists. He said Washington is a killing field. He implied that if you go to the Washington Monument, you will be stabbed, you'll be murdered. I happen to love Washington, D.C. I hope everybody watching can visit if they haven't already. It has its problems, but it's an incredible city, and you're not going to get stabbed or killed there when you visit Washington, D.C. That kind of fear-mongering from Donald Trump is vintage Trump. He knows it is a way to appeal to his base, but I don't know how it would broaden his appeal. And I think when we think about this long, meandering speech that went after midnight East Coast time, a time when most Americans are turning off the TV, going to bed, or watching late-night comics, you ask yourself, how did it widen his fan base? How did it broaden his appeal? And I think the answer is that it probably didn't. It may have rallied up his base, but it didn't widen, didn't expand that base. And to your point about why did he go off script so many times? I counted more than 100 times when he was deviating from his prepared remarks. Why? Because it made him feel good. He was bored reading his teleprompter speech. I could tell in his voice. He was monotone. He was bored by his own words. He went off script and ad-libbed to rally up the audience and to rally up himself. And to give him a moment of grace, he's coming off of this horrible assassination attempt. This was his first moment speaking in public in a big way since then. He understandably had a lot to say. But I think here's the takeaway about the American election right now. Two elderly men who don't want to leave the stage, Biden and Trump. That's what they have in common tonight.
Tia, very briefly, I only have about 20 seconds here. When you leave Milwaukee, what are you going to tell people about what you saw?
Well, I think I'm going to tell people that I saw a unified and energetic Republican Party, and I saw a Donald Trump that is somewhat reflective on what happened last weekend, but it's still the same Donald Trump, not really changed. And the final point is it's time for Democrats to get their act together because they're coming up against the Republican Party that seems focused, unified, and ready to charge ahead. They are literally counting down the days to the election.
Okay, Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, Brian Stelter, as always, thank you. Stick around if you don't mind, because we're going to turn our attention to Donald Trump's opponent, Joe Biden. He has vowed to stay in the race, but could that change as the pressure grows? That's next. As Joe Biden fights COVID and growing calls to step aside, reports now that he's more open to listening.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
While his VP delivers an energetic speech, her attention squarely on the Republicans.
If you claim to stand for unity, you need to do more than just use the word.
Democrats, though, are still seeking that unity within their own party. All right, Tia, Brian, and Richard are back. Brian, Donald Trump used Joe Biden's name, his last name, only once in an hour and a half. And then when he did it, he said, I wasn't going to do it, and I'm not going to do it again. Right. What was that about?
That was a clever scripting strategy by Trump's speechwriters. They weren't going to have Trump mention Biden at all because they assume Biden's going to be replaced. Trump was almost able to go through with it, but as he ad-libbed tonight, he mentioned Biden, and then he was self-aware enough to catch himself when he was doing it. The point is that the Republicans don't know who they're up against. They don't think it's going to be Biden, but it's anybody's guess right now. The pressure on Biden's intense. As you reported, there are all these Democratic leaders going to Biden, urging him to step aside, but we don't know what he's going to do.
Richard, I know you're in Washington and you follow this very closely. Do you have an update for us? Like, where is it this evening?
Yeah, the walls are clearly closing in on Joe Biden's leadership. And when you have top Democrats like a Nancy Pelosi, like a Barack Obama, urging him to reconsider, I think he's going to spend this weekend in isolation, really taking a second look at his legacy and how he wants to leave the condition of his party as they head into November. There is some buzz here in D.C., some pundits, and we're hearing it on cable television, that perhaps President Biden might make a decision by Monday. I just got an update about an hour ago from the White House. Biden has no public events scheduled tomorrow on Friday. Normally he'd be on the campaign trail or doing something, but he is clearly laying low. So the pressure is really on President Biden. But one thing about covering the Biden White House, and one thing you talk to anybody in Biden world, Joe Biden is stubborn. When he's pushed, he digs in. And that's what we're seeing right now. But it looks like the pressure is getting to him. The New York Times is reporting that he is possibly open to a leadership change, although no decision yet. But this next 24 to 48 to 72 hours will be critical for President Biden.
Also for his health. I mean, you know, it's not a surprise, I suppose, he doesn't have any events tomorrow. He has COVID. We understand. I think he's taking Paxlovid and needs some time to recover as well, I would presume. In the interim, in the absence of seeing him, we've been seeing a lot of Vice President Harris. But Tia, she must be walking a very fine line here. You know, what's her strategy at this point?
Yeah, well, she has no choice but to remain loyal to President Biden as long as he's running for re-election, because if people even get a whiff or a rumor that she's trying to take him out, that could cause people to turn on her. That could, quite frankly, ruin the relationship that she needs with him, no matter what happens moving forward. So she has to play the part right now of a happy vice president, a happy right hand who is there. Also, she's the one on the trail right now representing the Biden-Harris ticket. So she's got to stay true to that. She's got to be the one giving a strong performance for supporters so that they can hopefully stick with Democrats. There are so many questions. Now, I think should Biden step aside, she will hope to be the party's nominee. And again, there are a whole lot of complications as to what happens if Biden steps aside. That's a whole nother discussion. But it would be hard not for Kamala Harris to not be the nominee. But right now, she's just got to wait, bide her time, and stick with what is current. That's Biden is the nominee. She is the vice presidential candidate.
This is a brutal news cycle. It's moving at the speed of sound. Thank you all for guiding us through this convention. Tia Mitchell, Richard Madden, and Brian Stelter. We will talk to you again at the DNC just a few weeks away.
You bet.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn now to France, where Team Canada swimmers have arrived for the Olympic Games, but took a special trip just days before they are set to compete.
Just sitting there, and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet.
How they honored Canadian veterans in our moment. We are 1 week away from the Paris 2024 Olympics, and in between the training and preparation, Canada's swim team made a very special journey. They went to Juno Beach, the team that is working so hard to do Canada proud, coming face to face with the valor and sacrifice of Canadian soldiers 80 years ago, and that is our moment. Many of these swimmers are as young as the soldiers who once stormed the beach, a fact not lost on three-time Olympian Sydney Pickram.
I was just sitting there and I was like, I can't believe that we're here for a swim meet. And like what people had to do to come here and to fight for everything for the Canadians.
They toured the Juno Beach Center, Yuri Kissel dedicating a poppy to his grandfather who fought in France.
It's pretty amazing being here. I'd always reflect on my grandfather and try to imagine what he went through. And coming to this museum and seeing the footage I saw really kind of helps paint that picture a little more clearly.
And the center's director said Canada's soldiers and its Olympians are united by the same values, even if they came to the beach for very different reasons.
I just wish the veterans were here to see it. I really would. And from where they are, I'm sure they're very proud.
Good for them. CBC is your home for Paris 2024. We'll have all the major events across our platforms, including the opening ceremony on July 26. I'll be there hosting alongside Scott Russell. And tune in all next week as we bring you the National from Paris in the lead up to the Olympics. Thank you for being with us. You can watch the National anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.